Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Deku's Christmas turned into a meet-cute disaster? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. I don't want a lot for Christmas. There is just one thing I need. And I don't care about the presents underneath the Christmas tree. Izuku sang along with Mariah Carey under his breath to music playing on the cafe speakers as he waited for his best friend's reaction. Shoto wasn't really known to be very outwardly expressive. Which was maybe a good thing, because when Shoto looked away from the video playing on his phone and back to Izuku with a neutral tone, it's not that bad. Izuku almost believed his life wasn't totally over. With a grimace, Izuku motioned back at the screen, where a video of him falling at the Santa photo booth station during his last mall cop shift was still playing. Just wait. He had been attempting to come between two angry parents trying to cut in line at the mall's photo booth station with their kids when he was accidentally shoved into the stack of decorative Christmas presents, sending them tumbling all over the floor and spilling the packing peanuts inside. Of course, one of the kids in line had started live streaming Mall Cop Ruins Christmas at this point, hence the video he could now show Shoto. He proceeded to slip on packing peanuts every time he tried to stand up, like some sorry cartoon character, while children started crying. Those presents were all empty. Does that mean we don't get gifts this year? Are you okay, young man? The mall Santa had said, kindly stepping off set for a moment to offer help. He reached out a gloved hand. And then Izuku reached for that hand and missed, grabbing Santa's beard instead. And with a dramatic rip, the fake beard tore away, leaving the shocked face of the actor behind. That's not Santa. Some other kid shouted. This is all fake. They're tricking us. More shouts and cries of children and angry parents rang through the mall just as the video cut out. Which was great, because that meant that at least the part where Izuku and the Santa actor got jumped by toddlers was at least not recorded. A small mercy, Izuku supposed, though his supervisor was not happy. The video sat at 700k views. That was 700k too many people to have witnessed the most embarrassing moment of Izuku's life. Shoto lowered the phone from his face, taking a sip of peppermint mocha. And then, surprisingly, instead of mentioning the absolute train wreck that he had just watched, he asked, Midoriya, have you been getting enough sleep? Izuku blinked his sunken eyes. What does that have to do with anything? I've known you for years, and I know you aren't this clumsy unless you're overworking yourself, Shoto stated. Have you been pulling all-nighters studying for your LSATs again? Night is when I study best. Izuku defended by way of answering. Besides, if I just study at night, I can sign up for more shifts at the mall during the day. It's always extra chaotic during the holiday seasons, so it's good to have more people on duty. Though maybe that didn't matter anymore since his supervisor asked him not to come in for the rest of the holiday season. Shoto leveled him with a glare. He had been there through Izuku's fraught journey, when he had been studying hard in college to make top marks to keep his scholarship, when he had taken on a lot of jobs after graduation so he could save up for law school, when he had decided to be a mall cop since at least I can help people this way before I finally become a lawyer and can do some real good. He knew how hard Izuku worked in his goal to help people, and he was supportive, but he also always called his best friend out when he was working too hard. I know you've saved up enough money to apply to law schools by now. And I know you've needed to spend more time preparing your resume and studying for the required tests. So why are you still taking on mall cop shifts if you already don't have time to rest? Izuku shrugged, taking a sip of his black coffee, his fourth of the morning. I just figured I should help out. Although, I guess I can't show my face around there for a while now. He laughed pathetically. I'm pretty sure kids would cry every time they saw me. He really hated making kids sad. That's probably for the best. Shoto patted him on the shoulder. You could use a break. Yeah, maybe I can just do some shifts farther away from the Santa station? Or I can see if they'll let me secure the perimeter outside the mall, but that might be kind of cold dash. Midoriya, Shoto cut him off before he could really get rambling. I meant you should rest. Relax. Even my father takes time off to relieve stress. If you don't rest, then you're just going to keep making clumsy mistakes like this. Izuku sighed in exasperation. To be honest, I've been so busy since I stopped being a kid, I'm not sure I even know how to relax anymore. It seemed like every time he tried to take a break, his thoughts would just spiral with stressors about achieving the future he wanted. His goal was clear: become a lawyer so that he can help people by upholding the law and defending the innocent. But it was a world of the rich and powerful. He didn't quite fit in, being from a poor family with an ordinary background. So, unless he strived to be the greatest, he just wasn't sure he would survive. Well, when you were a kid, what relaxed you? Shoto asked. I guess I always liked the Christmas season, Izuku muttered, looking around the festively decorated cafe they liked and listening to Mariah Carey's upbeat vocals. Sleigh rides and music and all the sweets. Shoto nodded thoughtfully. How about this, then, why don't you get away from the city for a while? My family's cabin will be empty this season since we're going to the Bahamas instead, and we need someone to look after it. You should borrow it in our stead. What? I couldn't possibly impose like that. Izuku exclaimed. Shoto liked doing him expensive favors over the years of their friendship, but a whole cabin? That was bigger than Izuku could even imagine. You wouldn't impose, and you'd be helping us out, Shoto insisted. It's in a fairly secluded town up in the mountains, so it gets cold. The chill can be damaging to the pipes and the structure if no one is there to use the water and heating system. Izuku sighed. Well, if you think it will be helpful, will. I'd much rather have a trusted friend in the cabin than a random stranger taking care of it. I guess a secluded cabin might be nice to study in. Shoto frowned again, his worry for his clearly exhausted friend showing. If that's what you want to do there, then. The library is suited for studying. But make sure to take breaks too. It's near a town with a rather charming Christmas market. They're famous for their snickerdoodles. Izuku perked up at the mention of sweets. A festive town could be nice, though he didn't really think he could spare the time between all his studying and applications. Okay, he relented. If you're sure it would be helpful to your family and you're sure I can get my studies in, then I'll check with my mom if she'll be okay with me being away for Christmas this year. And a few days later, Izuku found himself staring in awe at the stretches of snowy fields outside the train window. Mizudafu was a 3-hour ride north of the big city where he and his mom lived, rural enough that there were no large buildings impeding the scenery. Izuku imagined he would be able to see the stars once the sun set. When he told Inko about Shoto's offer and where he would be going, she was enthusiastic about the idea. That sounds like just the thing you need, honey. Mizudafu is wonderful. I have a friend from up there, Bakugo Mitsuki-. But I haven't had the chance to visit her. Oh gosh, I wonder if you'll run into her and her family if she's still there. Her husband is lovely, and oh, I think she had a son who's probably about your age. And she was muttering even more than Izuku normally did. It almost made Izuku bummed that his mom was so okay with not spending the holidays with him. But he supposed that only went to show how much of a drag he was these days if even his mother was so happy for him to do something out of the ordinary. He really had made his mom and Shoto worry. Shaking off his instinctual guilt, Izuku ate the last of the katsu bento his mom packed him for the train and tried settling into the peaceful atmosphere. He was going to enjoy his trip just like they intended for him. And it was easy, getting into the holiday atmosphere as he finally started passing quaint houses and shops tucked between evergreen trees, the decorations, the happy families, the good vibes. At least it was easy to think that way until he exited the warmth of the train car and was hit in the face with an Arctic blast. It was colder up here than in the city. Shoto had warned Izuku of that. So, Izuku just bundled himself further into his favorite yellow scarf and began the trek to the cabin. He'd have to walk, since the Todoroki car was parked at the house and there were no taxis or Ubers out this far. It was perfectly nice at first, the chill was invigorating, and the falling snowflakes tickled his lashes. But by the time he made it to his destination, the cabin was smaller than he was expecting of a Todoroki estate. It actually had a very cozy appearance. He was soaked to the bone. But I can draw a nice hot bath, he thought, letting himself in with the key Shoto gave him before he left. The inside was freezing since the heat wasn't on yet, so Izuku set about turning on the breaker and checking that all the heating vents were unblocked, like Shoto had instructed. He took a cursory glance around all the rooms as he went, a few bedrooms upstairs, a living room with a cozy fireplace, a large kitchen with a few canned goods, and the library was just perfect for studying in, before finally ending in the master bathroom, turning the knobs on the bathtub as hot as it will go. He wouldn't get any studying done if he was shivering like an angry chihuahua. Once the tub was full, Izuku stripped as fast as possible. He could hear the vents kicking in, but the heat hadn't quite spread around the house yet, and dipped his toe in, excited to be warm. "For the love of All Might," he shrieked, tearing his foot right back out of the freezing water. Shoot. The boiler. He had forgotten to check that the boiler was working. Starting to reach a breaking point, Izuku threw on a fuzzy robe and his old bunny slippers and trudged back downstairs, trying to remember where Shoto said the boiler was. Just as he entered the foyer, he heard the sound of a car pulling up outside. That's weird. There were no other houses in the area, so no one should be driving over here. Heavy stomps clomped closer, and the sound of a key being turned in the front door suddenly froze Izuku in his tracks. Thinking fast, he grabbed a can of fake snow spray sitting in a nearby box of Christmas decorations. The door swung open, and with a fierce, "Get out!" Izuku squeezed the trigger as hard as he could. F-dash! The intruder shouted as the entire spray can exploded over both of them. It seemed Izuku didn't quite know his own strength. When the fake snow particles settled, the two men froze in shock, catching their breaths. Izuku slowly came to his senses enough to meet crimson eyes in an unfairly handsome face. Even covered in fake snow, the stranger had an attractive figure. The slight scent of cinnamon wafted between them. Those striking eyes met Izuku's. And then they dragged down to his damp robe and bunny slippers. "What the F is on your feet?" That was enough to have Izuku snapping back to the moment, sputtering indignantly. "Who are you?" "This is a private establishment. I'll have you know that breaking and entering is a crime dash." "I ain't breaking anything." The intruder spat back, his voice a vicious growl. "Who the hell do you think you are accusing me of being an intruder, you squatter? I've seen that entire candy cane family come and go from this house for years, and you're freckled but ain't one of them." Candy cane dash, Izuku's mind whizzed at the description. "You mean the Todorokis? You know those besties?" The man rasped. "Yes." Izuku said indignantly. "They've entrusted me with looking after their cabin while they're away, and I am prepared to do anything to protect it. I will have you know I'm combat trained. If you're here to rob them while they're gone, I'll take you down dash." He was cut off by a snort of amusement. "Not in those dumb slippers you won't." Izuku flushed all the way down to said, "Dumb slippers." He maybe looked less than intimidating right now. "Calm down, Snow Bunny, I'm not here to rob my employers, I'm just here to fix the boiler." Izuku's fighting stance dropped. "Your employers?" "Yeah, my employers," the man parroted mockingly. "They hired me years ago to fix up their cabin when things went wrong. Even gave me a key and some fancy schmancy phone app that notifies me when devices are malfunctioning, like the notif I got about the boiler. I came here to fix it." "Fix the boiler," Izuku muttered, remembering why he was downstairs in a bathrobe in the first place. "Oh." The man snorted. "Yeah, oh." Izuku shuffled awkwardly in his slippers, his self-consciousness catching up with him now that the confusion was settled. Fortunately, the stranger's attention wasn't on him. The man had taken out his phone and made a call, putting it on speaker. "Katsuki? What is the meaning of this? Is there something wrong with the cabin?" The unmistakable voice of Enji Todoroki blared. "Yeah, there's something wrong. There's some loser holed up here saying you told him to take care of the house." Those red eyes were glaring at him again. "Does that seem right? Some loser. Does this loser by chance have green hair and freckles?" "Yep." Izuku resented Enji's quickness at calling him loser, but at least he was helping clear up the situation. "In that case, yes, that is my son's friend, Midoriya Izuku. Shoto said he would be staying there for the holidays to relax." "I'm actually here to take care of the cabin," Izuku chimed in, feeling the need to defend himself from looking like some freeloader in front of this stranger, Katsuki apparently. Katsuki scoffed. "I'm taking care of the cabin, like I do every year." "Yes, as you should, Katsuki." Shoto's friend is mostly just here for a vacation. Izuku winced. Looks like Shoto was exaggerating how desperately they needed someone to look after the cabin to get Izuku to agree to a trip. They apparently already had a defensive a-hole on the job. If that's all settled, I have my own vacation to get back to. You boys behave, Enji said. Always do, Katsuki grumbled before hanging up. Izuku stiffened as the man shot him another disparaging look. And then just as quickly, he trudged away, ignoring Izuku. Hey, what are you doing? Izuku demanded, following Katsuki into the basement. Katsuki approached a large tank and took off his coat before adjusting the tank settings. Fixing the DMN boiler. I can help dash. Don't need it, Snow Bunny. Don't call me that, Izuku sputtered, stomping the slippers that had earned him this ridiculous nickname. Katsuki sneered. Then maybe I should call you Deku since you're useless here. I can maintain the cabin by myself. To emphasize his point, he tightened a bolt and the boiler flared to life, his biceps bulging impressively from the process. Yeah, Izuku sighed out at the distracting sight. Wait, no. Just call me Izuku. The characters are close enough. I'll stick to Deku. Fine, then I'll call you the Kaken. Katsuki's shoulders stiffened. What? The Kaken? Each word brought him one step closer to Izuku, but Izuku held his ground, staring up at the taller man defiantly. You are Kaken. He smiled, fake friendly, and held out a hand. Well, thanks for your help with the boiler, Kaken. It's nice to meet you. Katsuki just shouldered past him. Whatever. I'm out of here. Izuku followed him up to the front door, making sure the JRK was leaving. To his credit, Katsuki didn't flinch when he ripped open the door and stepped into the freezing snow. Izuku himself couldn't help but shiver in his dampness. Now that the boiler was thankfully fixed, a hot bath was looking extra good right now. Katsuki huffed a laugh. Okay, enjoy your bath, Deku. Don't let those things on your feet drown. Izuku blushed. Sheet? Was he muttering out loud again? Get home safe. Izuku shouted angrily at the retreating figure, trying to get the last word in. He might have missed the mark a bit. Will do, Katsuki snarked, and then he was hopping into a red truck and disappearing off into the thickening snow. Izuku fumed as he slammed the door shut on their encounter. That man was so rude. Izuku worked too hard to deal with some a-hole calling him Deku. Even if that a-hole was pretty handy with the boiler. Whatever. Hopefully, no other issues would come up in the cabin, and Izuku wouldn't have to see him again. The only trace of Katsuki that remained in the house would be the cinnamon scent left behind. Izuku took one last whiff of the charming scent before stomping upstairs to draw himself a new bath. The Todoroki's silver Jeep Grand Cherokee was definitely the nicest car Izuku ever sat in. It had heated seats, which was a nice surprise to Izuku when he climbed in first thing in the morning. Plus, Bluetooth connection so he could use his phone while driving. Although his nice experience steering the vehicle smoothly down the road into Mizutofu was ruined by he could somehow hear Shoto making on the other end of his call. Katsuki. Izuku repeated the name to his silent friend. Katsuki. He said he was already taking care of the cabin, and he has been for years. Why didn't you tell me about him? Honestly, I forgot, Shoto intoned. Izuku had called him over Bluetooth to question him during the drive. He's just a handyman, and he's not very social, so I haven't actually interacted with him much. Izuku thought Shoto calling someone not very social was a bit ironic given his best friend's typical disposition, but he supposed it made sense because of how unpersonable Katsuki was. He showed up last night and I was totally unprepared. It was so awkward. God, Todoroki, I attacked him with snow spray and it exploded everywhere. Wow, another mark in the clumsy tally for you, Shoto replied unsympathetically. But seriously, Midoriya, don't worry about him. He just came to fix the boiler like he said. Katsuki won't bother you again, unless something else breaks, in which case, won't it be better for you to let an expert take care of it? I guess, Izuku muttered. He and his mom had grown up with a fix-it-yourself kind of attitude since it was expensive to hire handymen for everything, so he wasn't really used to having one on standby. But I still can't believe you didn't warn me. Is there anyone else who might show up at the cabin? The line was silent for a moment as Shoto thought, and then he said, "No, it's only Katsuki who father had trusted with a copy of the key. Our usual chauffeur and chef are with us right now." Right, of course. Izuku tried not to implode at the mention of Shoto's rich people life. "Anyways, I've got to go. I'm pulling into town now to get some supplies." "Enjoy," Shoto said knowingly before hanging up. And enjoy, Izuku did. The streets were wide and clean of snow, and after parking by the curb in the central square, Izuku dashed out to take in the giant natural pine serving as the town's centerpiece. It was decorated with red and gold ornaments, as were the wreath-lined streetlights. The shops around the square were Christmas-themed, too, and had handwritten signs advertising toys, sweets, and decorations. It was something out of a storybook. Izuku didn't even know where to start. He got himself a hot chocolate and bustled around the main street while sipping it. The canned soup he had last night for dinner did the job, but he stocked up on some fresh produce and microwave meals. Okay, so maybe he never learned to cook since his mom made dinner for him every night. Sue him, she was an amazing chef. He couldn't help but stop in a few other shops just to look around and meet some of the locals. The barista at the cafe Thochako, she said her name was very bubbly and encouraged Izuku to come by to study there anytime. The couple who ran the ice rink, Idra and Mina, were so friendly. Mina even promised to teach him to skate. He also met a nice man named Mirio at the toy shop, who was buying some presents for the local orphanage. "The kids are just great. Volunteering there is the best way to spend a holiday," Mirio said with a smile, and Izuku's heart warmed at the notion. They ended up exchanging numbers in case Izuku ever wanted to come by sometime, too. Overall, it was a great morning. Just what Izuku needed to stock up on supplies and feel refreshed before getting back to his studies. Maybe today would be a good day to work on analytical reasoning, or maybe he should focus more on the argumentative writing section. "Hey, watch it!" An angry voice shouted, bringing Izuku out of his thoughts as he bumped into a firm body. His grocery bag slipped from his grasp at the impact and his box of strawberries spilled onto the street. He dove to the ground to save as many of his favorite fruit as he could. "Sorry, I wasn't paying attention." "Geez, you really are such a Deku," the voice grumbled, and Izuku now realized the person he collided with was none other than Katsuki. Katsuki crouched down, collecting some of the fallen strawberries off the ground with a curled lip. "Why the hell are you buying summer fruit in December? Oranges or pears are way fresher than berries at this time of year." "The shopkeeper assured me they are plenty fresh, thank you," Izuku spat. "I just felt like having strawberries." They glared at each other, a black hole of tension on the otherwise jolly street. Izuku wasn't going to look away first. He felt like he had something to prove to this pissy JRK after looking so stupid in front of him the night before. He worked in security and he was going to be a lawyer someday. He wouldn't let Katsuki treat him like some defect. To his pride, Katsuki broke eye contact first, but only to look disdainfully at Izuku's other purchases. "Cup ramen? Seriously? It's nice and warm for cold weather. That sheet isn't healthy. And it's never spicy enough." "Well, I think it's yummy." "Like hell it is. It's all bad ingredients. Ramen should be fresh dash. Would you quit nagging me about my purchases dash? I would if you weren't so awful at making a grocery list dash. I know how to take care of myself." Izuku didn't mean to shout, but he had had it up to here with this infuriating Grinch. All his calmness from his peaceful morning was ruined. Katsuki stopped his arguing to smirk. "Whatever you say, Deku." Izuku just rolled his eyes. There was no winning with this JRK. "Well, what did you buy then?" He peeked at the basket Katsuki was carrying with him and spied what appeared to be tree bark. Before he could get a good look, the other man slammed the lid shut. "Fresh ingredients. Something you apparently don't know about. I gotta get this sheet drying, so don't get in my way again." "It was an accident." Izuku let him walk away, knowing that if he tried to talk more it would only get him madder. He muttered under his breath on the way back to the car, trying to focus on the Christmas tree and decorations to regain his good mood from earlier. There was no reason to get so worked up. Muzutafu was like a Christmas wonderland, the only stain on the jolly vibes being the walking menace that was Katsuki. After 3 days in a row of holing up to work in the library, Izuku felt like his brain was going to melt out of his ears. He had to admit that non-stop studying was better in theory than in practice. Without his shifts at the mall and his mealtimes with his mom to break up the monotony, he was putting in so many consecutive hours of brain work that he was more mentally burnt out than ever. At least he wasn't stumbling into fake presents or ripping off beards though. I've made enough progress for the day. I'm actually ahead of schedule, Izuku muttered to himself, looking at the carefully planned out calendar he had to keep track of his studies. Maybe I should be factoring in more breaks? But the thought of giving himself purposeful time off still sent a pang of anxiety through him. That wasn't good. Shoto had sent him here specifically to decrease his stress. Maybe he needed another venture into the town to re-energize himself? He suddenly remembered that friendly man he met on his last supply run on Main Street. Mirio worked at the orphanage and said they accepted volunteers. That could be a good study break. Izuku could imagine himself relaxing as long as it involved being helpful, especially to children. He found Mirio's number in his phone and gave him a call, and an hour later he was at a small wooden cabin at the edge of Mizurufu holding a ladder steady while Mirio patched up the shingled roof. "Thanks, Midoriya, it's really great to have you here," Mirio said, climbing down once the task was done. The older kids still aren't quite big enough to keep the ladder steady, so it was lucky that someone strong showed up to help. Izuku flushed at the compliment and matched Mirio's big smile. "I'm glad. That old roof can let in some bad drafts in the colder months," Mirio stated as he moved on to secure the shutters lining the windows. "I try to fix it up myself every year so I can save some extra money to get the kids gifts." "That's so noble," Izuku appreciated. "You really work hard for these kids, don't you?" "Of course. They're the best." Mirio led him inside, pouring them both a hot coffee to warm up. It was no Todoroki estate, but the inside of the orphanage was charming in its own way, littered with toys and drawings stuck up to the walls. "You still free to help me put up the tree? I was hoping to get it done before the kids get back from school." "Sure," Izuku said. They pulled an old fake pine tree out of the attic and fluffed it out in the center of the playroom. Izuku was just brushing the dust off the branches when the sound of chattering came from outside. "Perfect timing. Looks like you'll be able to meet the little angels, after all," Mirio beamed, and Izuku followed him to greet the orphans at the front door. "Wow, the tree is up already." One boy cheered as he burst through the door, followed by about 10 others. "Can we decorate it tonight, Mirio-san?" "Only after you've finished your homework," Mirio joked, and a bunch of the children pouted. But that didn't stop them from circling the empty tree excitedly. "Calm down, everyone, we have a guest. This is Midoriya-san. He helped put up the tree. Everyone say, thank you." A collective, "Thank you, Midoriya," resounded in the room and Izuku laughed at the cuteness of it. The kids went right back to energetically examining the tree. It was enough to rub off on Izuku, the kids' happy expressions filling him with cheer. He noticed a little girl still hovering by the front door, looking at all the chaos with nervous eyes. She reminded Izuku of himself when he was younger, an anxious kid who didn't quite know how to play with others yet. Instinctually, he knelt down to her level and gave her a warm smile. "Hello, I'm Izuku. What's your name?" "Eri." She blinked up at him in curiosity, some of her nerves fading. "Izuku-san." She mumbled, adorably stumbling over the unfamiliar name a bit. "Yes. Are you an elf?" Eri asked to Izuku's surprise. He chuckled quietly to himself, not wanting to mock the little girl's question. "What gave you that idea?" "You've got green hair," she muttered. "And green eyes. And you made the Christmas tree appear." "I suppose I did," Izuku laughed. "Couldn't argue with that logic. Maybe I am an elf after all." "Oh," Eri sighed in amazement. There was finally a spark of interest in her fearful eyes. "And you've got white hair and you light up the room, so maybe you're a fairy," Izuku added to play along, and his heart warmed further when the little girl flushed in delight. "Eri is our newest arrival," Mirio informed him, coming to talk to Izuku again now that he managed to calm the other kids down. "This will be her first Christmas with us, right, Eri?" She nodded shyly. So we have to make it extra special for you. For me, Eri said, looking hopefully between the two adults, and they gave her assured smiles. Quietly in Izuku's ear, Mirio whispered, she was rescued from an abusive household, so she has anxiety and PTSD. That's why she's so shy. But the doctor said not to worry since she's young enough to grow out of it as long as we are kind and patient with her. The fear in Eri's eyes made sense to Izuku now, and his heart hurt for the troubled past she had. Mirio patted her lovingly on the head, being careful with her in a way he didn't have to be with the other children. I think you will like our celebrations. Now, why don't you join Koda and Katsuma? They're making ornaments to decorate the tree later. Will Izuku-san help? She asked hesitantly. Izuku had planned to get back to studying in the afternoon, but between Eri's and Mirio's puppy dog eyes, Izuku had to give in. Sure. I can stick around a bit more. He could afford to take a longer break today. If it was for Eri. He ended up seated at a table too small for him with the kindergartners of the orphanage, Eri on his lap, and Koda and Katsuma chatting his ear off. They were drawing on little cutouts of cardboard that Mirio must have made and gluing them to ribbons to be hung on the tree when the older kids were done with their homework. Izuku's heart just about melted when Eri showed him her ornament, a little picture of a green-haired elf and a white-haired fairy. Spending the afternoon with the kids reminded Izuku of how he used to want to be a teacher when he was younger. Oh well, it was an old dream. He couldn't dwell on it now that he was so focused on law school. Later, Eri, Koda, and Katsuma's ornaments were hung on the tree with some older ones from years prior, and when Mirio finished wrapping the tree in string lights and plugged it in, all the children cheered. Eri's little eyes sparkled in the twinkling lights. Wow! She hadn't smiled the whole time Izuku had been there, but the light in her eyes now gave Izuku hope that she would someday. Thanks for helping out so much today, Mirio said when he was seeing Izuku off for the night. The kids are always super hyper at this time of year, so it's great to have an extra set of hands if you ever want to come by again. I definitely will, Izuku assured. He was more relaxed than ever after the wonderful time he had today. Are there any other Christmas traditions you'd need help with? I just need to wrap some more presents, but the main event of the month is our special field trip, though we already have chaperones for that, Mirio explained. We gather donations to rent a sleigh ride, and we take the children to look at all the decorated houses around town. The townspeople always get excited for it too, some of them even make snacks for the kids to have during their ride. So it's a great way to gain support for the orphanage and give the kids a fun experience. That sounds magical, Izuku replied. As he drove home, he was already thinking about how he could decorate the Todoroki's house for the orphans to see. It had a pretty exterior, and the front yard had plenty of space to decorate. Izuku vowed to make it an absolute spectacle. Eri's eyes lit up at their Christmas tree, so hopefully if he decorated well enough, he would get to see that sweet little girl smile. The path to becoming a lawyer was hard. Izuku knew that going into it. But getting a law degree just seemed like the best way to fight for what's right, and that was the best way to help people, wasn't it? So he pushed himself hard, harder than his peers who mostly came from affluent and educated backgrounds and had connections he didn't. Sure, maybe he deserved a vacation from time to time like Shoto insisted. But he couldn't handle it. While his time in Mizutofu was wonderful for his spirits, it made getting his studies done that much harder. He longed to go out and have fun, but then he would be too plagued by shame at neglecting his work, but then he would stay at the Todoroki estate unable to focus. This was exactly as Izuku feared. Giving himself time off just made all the exhaustion catch up to him. In his unfocused state, he ended up just lounging around the cabin, rewatching old All Might DVDs his mom had snuck into his luggage. Katsuki ended up coming by a few times, but they didn't acknowledge each other beyond the weird look Katsuki gave him when he caught him crying at the end of All Might. You're next. Izuku just let Katsuki work, figuring if he tried to butt in to fix whatever thing was broken himself, it would only end in a fight with the explosive JRK. He stopped paying attention to the sound of that truck pulling into the driveway and the front door creaking open at random hours. He had managed a few more trips into town to study at Ochako's cafe and visit Eri at the orphanage. Even if those things were a bit distracting, he didn't mind. Ochako was quite chatty whenever he stopped by, so he didn't get a lot done, but they got along swimmingly and Izuku always found himself laughing with this new friend. That this customer asked for my number, and you know what Toga did? She grabbed a plastic fork and stabbed it into this counter between us, Ochako cackled, telling another story about her rather eccentric girlfriend. Izuku had yet to meet Toga, but from what he heard, that was probably for the best. I haven't been able to get the dent out. But it's fine because when I look at it, I just think about how much she loves me. Wow, I didn't even realize plastic forks could dent hardwood without breaking, Izuku remarked, observing the holes in the counter the two leaned against while they gossiped. Well, that was another morning lost to chatting with Ochako, but at least it was good conversation. Looking at the grandfather clock in the corner of the old-timey cafe, Izuku realized he wouldn't have any time to study. He had promised the orphans he would play with them after lunch, and as much work as he had to do, he would never disappoint them. I've got to get going, Oka. But I'll see you soon. Where to? Ochako questioned, and Izuku told her all about the orphanage, gushing about the kids and Eri in particular. Her eyes lit up with an idea. Since you're already in this area, you should get them something from the bakery across the street. They have the best snickerdoodles I've ever tasted. Really? I remember Shoto mentioning something about Mizudafu being famous for their snickerdoodles. I'll stop by there first then. Izuku agreed, thanking Ochako for the advice and heading to the bakery. It was rather nondescript, no Christmas theme or seasonal decorations, which was probably why Izuku hadn't noticed it until now. There was just an elegant brick exterior with a small display window and a sign that read Dynamite Bakery. Izuku thought it was a strange name, but it didn't stop him from entering once he caught a whiff of the delicious cinnamon scent coming from the doorway. Close the demon door. You're letting a draft in. A harsh voice screamed the instant Izuku stepped inside. But that could only be Kaken? He sputtered, meeting the now familiar glare of Katsuki. In the flesh, Deku, Katsuki snarked before going back to the task he was doing in the kitchen behind the front counter. It was surprising to imagine Katsuki working in a bakery, Izuku thought. Though now that he saw him at work, it fit perfectly. Katsuki was in his element, moving about with elegance and a certainty one could only have when they were an expert at something. On racks under what looked like a high-tech vent, the bark Izuku had spotted in Katsuki's basket the week before sat drying, and only now did Izuku recognize it as cinnamon. That explained the man's cinnamon scent. And the way Izuku saw him kneading cookie dough explained the biceps. You just gonna stare all day or did you come here for something? Katsuki's comment snapped Izuku out of his muscle-induced daze. Sea cookies. Izuku sputtered, flustered. Just a box of snickerdoodles to bring to the orphanage. You'll have to wait 7 more minutes. My last batch is still in the oven, and then it needs to set before I can package it, Katsuki replied. The idea of being alone in a room with Katsuki for 7 minutes was not appealing, to put it politely. Aren't there already finished cookies in the display case? Yeah, but the new batch will be fresher, Katsuki snapped. Geez, Deku, you have no appreciation for food quality. You said you're taking them to the orphanage. As long as you don't loiter, I can have these new cookies packaged fast enough so that they'll still be warm by the time you get them to the kids, dumbass. Oh, was all Izuku could say in response. His tone was angry, but was Katsuki being considerate? Thanks, Kaken. Quit it with that stupid nickname, Katsuki growled. It's Katsuki. Bakugo Katsuki. Bakugo, something about that name sounded familiar but Izuku couldn't quite recall why. Oh well, if it was important it would come to him. They lapsed into silence as they waited, and Izuku found himself examining the feisty man. He looked softer here, like he could let down his guard now that he was on his own turf. Izuku was reminded of how handsome Katsuki was now that he wasn't being so snarky. A little smudge of flour smeared his cheek, making him almost look cute. Weirded out by his own thought, Izuku tore his gaze away, burying himself in his phone as a distraction. He decided to look up Dynamite Bakery out of curiosity. Surprisingly, he found a ton of articles commending how good the cinnamon cookies were. It was actually the bakery that made Mizudafu associated with cinnamon cookies. Scrolling further, Izuku read that it was opened only 7 years ago by a baking prodigy, Bakugo Katsuki. Izuku couldn't help but be amazed about this successful profession of the rude handyman who he just so happened to meet. Maybe it was creepy given that the man was only a few feet away, but Izuku dug deeper, clicking on an article about Katsuki. Wow, he had gotten into culinary school a year early at the age of 17, and he had even won an episode of Bake Off, though his popularity declined soon after his TV debut due to his pissy attitude on the show and lack of further public appearances. He opened up Dynamite Bakery soon after, and while it wasn't a world-famous brand or anything like it could have been, it was a draw for people who visited Mizudafu. All that plus he worked as a handyman for the Todorokis. That's actually really impressive. Sure is, Katsuki gloated. Izuku choked on his spit trying to stop his out-loud muttering that he had accidentally been doing again. Seeing Izuku's befuddled expression, Katsuki's smirk grew. You're looking at the #1 baker in the world, Deku. Feel free to grovel in amazement. The shitty attitude broke Izuku out of his awkwardness as the pair had another one of their usual stare-downs. Izuku was amazed, but that didn't mean he would let Katsuki be a JRK about it. Well, if you're so good, why are you here? Izuku prodded. You could be in New York or Chicago or any city in the country building a brand. This town has the best DMN cinnamon in the world, Katsuki replied without breaking eye contact. I keep telling you, nerd, it's the ingredients that are important. If staying in Mizudafu gets me the ingredients I need to be the best baker I can be, then I don't give a shit if I don't get famous. I know I'm #1, and anyone who's tried my cookies knows I'm #1. Seems kind of pretentious, Izuku accidentally muttered, the sheer confidence Katsuki had not being something that Izuku could relate to in his own fraught path to success. It was a foreign concept, being the greatest in your own terms and not someone else's. Katsuki just smirked at him again. Not pretentious if it's true. He strode to a table with a mixing bowl and scraped some leftover cookie dough out of it with a spoon, and then he stomped right up to Izuku. Eat it. Izuku frowned at the command, but he took the spoon anyway and liked the dough. And the flavors exploded in his mouth. It was all buttery and sugary, and the cinnamon was really unlike anything Izuku had tasted before. He couldn't help but lick the spoon clean, a happy, leaving his mouth unconsciously. Wow, Kaken really is amazing. He awakened from his food-induced lapse to find Katsuki watching him intently, and Izuku blushed self-consciously. His heart pounded from the intense eye contact. He almost thought he saw a slight flush on Katsuki's face, too. The oven timer going off interrupted their staring contest, and Katsuki turned away abruptly, whatever tension that was happening between them dissolving. Katsuki pulled the tray of finished snickerdoodles out of the oven, got out a box and some ribbon, and set about packaging the cookies just as quickly as he'd promised. Izuku's heart did another unhelpful flutter seeing the care that Katsuki placed on his baked goods. He really was passionate about his craft. Get out of my shop before these get cold, Katsuki grumbled, shoving the box, wrapped elegantly in a bright orange ribbon, at Izuku. The words were gruff, but Izuku thought he could tell the real meaning behind Katsuki's words now. Deliver these fast so that the kids will get them at their freshest. Thanks, Kaken, Izuku stuttered, dashing for the door before his heart could find any new ways to beat out of rhythm. It's Katsuki. Bakugo Katsuki. Bakugo. Bakugo Mitsuki. Mom's friend. Who has a son my age. Mom wanted to get in contact with her again. The memory finally caught up with Izuku, and he rushed back into the store. Oh, before I go, can I get your mom's number? Katsuki gave him a disgusted look and Izuku suddenly realized the implications of his question. Wait, it's not like that, Izuku shouted, shaking his head in embarrassment. It's to give to my mom. Midoriya Inko. They used to be friends. Maybe Katsuki was still too in shock from Izuku's questions, because he didn't complain while he jotted down a number on a sticky note and passed it to Izuku. Now cookies dash. I'm going, Izuku grumbled, finally departing for real. DMN, that interaction had gone as awkwardly as all their other interactions. But Izuku could admit that he could appreciate Katsuki in a new light after seeing this side of him. It took some puppy dog eyes and a particularly adorable "please, Mirio-san," from Eri, but the children convinced Mirio to let them have the snickerdoodles before dinner. Which was good, because at that point Izuku was sure Katsuki would skin him if the cookies he just baked were not eaten right away. After the snack, which the kids chomped up enthusiastically, Izuku stuck around to play through the resulting sugar high the kids had. He had gotten Eri to interact with the other kids more, and now she was unafraid to play with Koda and Katsuma. Mirio settled next to him on the floor while the two adults watched the kids play. "It's always a treat to see you interact with them, Midoriya," he remarked. "I don't think I would have gotten them to behave this well after a midday sugar rush without you." "You would have handled it," Izuku laughed along. "Sure, but it was nice that I could save my energy now with you looking after them. Since I'll be so busy tonight." "Tonight?" Izuku questioned. He flicked through his pocket calendar he always carried with him, and in a bright red pen, today was marked sleigh ride. Oh God! He had promised the orphans he would decorate his cabin for them to see, which he had completely forgotten to do in his exhaustion the past few days. "Yep," Mirio said, not noticing Izuku's internal panic. "We can still stop by your place, right Midoriya? Eri is pretty excited." "Yes, totally," Izuku squeaked, jumping up and starting to gather his things. "I just have to get going now. But I will see you all later." He waved a quick bye to the children and a confused Mirio and rushed home, calling Shoto along the way. "Shoto, where does your family keep the Christmas decorations for the cabin? Do you have anything for the lawn?" "Oh no, I might need to stop by some shops to grab more things." "Midoriya, slow down," Shoto requested. "What is this about?" Izuku explained his time at the orphanage and what he promised the kids. "That it's just that Eri, this sweet little girl, is still so shy. I wanted to do something that would really make her smile, you know?" "Okay, I see," Shoto replied. He told Izuku as much as he could recall about the Christmas decorations at the cabin. Fortunately, they already had a Christmas tree, so Izuku didn't need to worry about that. But unfortunately, they didn't have much by way of outdoor decorations aside from some wreaths they hang around the porch. "Eri really liked the colorful lights on the orphanage's tree we decorated," Izuku recalled. "Maybe I should buy some more lights for outside? Like those cool light-up reindeers and candy canes? Shoot, I don't know if I have time to buy those or if I can fit all that into the Jeep dash. Okay, I'll call Bakugo to help." Izuku slammed on the brakes. Thankfully no one else was on the little back road between the town and the Todoroki estate to see it. What? There's no need to call Kaken Dash. But Shoto had already hung up. So Izuku just grumbled and continued on his way. Katsuki was probably busy. There was no certainty he would show up. Izuku would just set up the decorations that he could for now, then run to town to grab more later. He sent Mirio a text saying to come to the Todoroki cabin last so that he'd have some extra time, and hopped out of the Jeep, sputtering about the lawn to clean up. The Christmas tree and ornaments were in the basement right where Shoto had described, and he set them up by the front door, struggling to place the all-white ornaments evenly on the giant tree. He and his mom usually had a much more colorful tree, so he wasn't sure about this aesthetic. After that, the wreaths went up, also all white. It looked elegant, but boring in Izuku's opinion. He should at least buy some lights to hang up. His musing was interrupted by an obnoxious car horn. Then there was the familiar sound of Katsuki's truck pulling into the driveway. He actually did show up. Izuku shut his eyes and sighed, taking a second to gather his strength for what would probably be another infuriating conversation. But his sigh turned into a gasp of delight when he opened his eyes to see decorations spilling out the bed of the truck. This really is pathetic," Katsuki insulted as he hopped out of the driver's seat and looked at what Izuku had put up so far. Izuku ignored the snark in favor of diving into the pile of decorations. There were giant candy canes, inflatable penguins and polar bears, a bunch of colorful wreaths, and most importantly, so many lights. "Kaken," Izuku chirped. "This is wonderful." Yeah, just get the ladder so we can start putting these up. The sun is going to set soon, so we don't have a lot of time." "Right." Izuku managed to rein himself in and get his focus back on the task at hand, bustling to the shed to grab the ladder. He missed the odd look that played on Katsuki's face at seeing Izuku's real smile. Unexpectedly, the two men managed to work together on something for once. Maybe it was because they had a common goal, Or maybe it was because they were so aware of the time crunch, or maybe they were just used to each other's antics at this point. They kept the bickering to a minimum as they lined the cabin's windows in wreaths, hung lights along the roof, and set the various yard accessories out. Although, Katsuki did make a few snide comments every now and then. "I saw you watching All Might," Katsuki grumbled. "Those movies are old as sheet." Izuku rolled his eyes. "Oh, so now you're going to make fun of me for being into nerdy kids' movies?" "What? Hell no." Katsuki looked personally offended by Izuku's words. "I'd explode anyone who even implied anything bad about All Might. He's the best superhero ever." "Wait, you are into All Might?" Izuku gasped. "Yeah. I grew up on those flicks," Katsuki asserted. "I didn't cry over it like a baby though." "Hey, you only saw me crying one time, and it was for your next," Izuku argued. "That movie totally tugs at the heartstrings. Anyone would cry." "Sounds like something a crybaby would say," Katsuki teased, and Izuku found himself laughing in response. "That's weird." The words were an insult, but Izuku could tell that Katsuki didn't mean it that way. It seemed like he was just trying to keep the conversation going. Which was clear when he added, "Two Heroes is the most emotional of the franchise. If you're gonna cry over All Might, it should be for that one." "I've cried at the end of that one too," Izuku admitted with a chuckle at himself. Katsuki snorted a laugh along with him. "But actually, it's been ages since I rewatched the All Might movies. So I think all of them are affecting me strongly since I haven't had the time to enjoy them since I was a kid." Nostalgia, I guess. "You would probably cry if you were to rewatch too." Katsuki scoffed. "Not a chance." "Wanna bet?" Izuku goaded. "You're on, nerd." At that moment, Izuku realized that he and Katsuki were smiling at each other, and they both quickly looked away, Katsuki clearing his throat embarrassedly. Izuku busied himself with untangling the last set of string lights. "Oh my god, did Kaken and I just make a plan together?" He pushed it out of his mind, knowing that Katsuki would never willingly hang out with him. He was only here because Shoto told him to come. They finished just as the sun set, and Izuku had to admit, they had really outdone themselves. As bossy as he had been telling Izuku where to place all the decorations, Katsuki really had an eye for design. They had put up a few smallish fake trees and strung lights between them to create a path that wrapped around the various inflatable and light-up animals in the yard. Izuku made sure to hang plenty of candy canes on the trees so the kids could grab them if they wanted a treat. Colorful lights and leaves lined the cabin's roof and windows, creating a nice background for the display on the lawn. Per Katsuki's advice, Izuku put little cardboard elf cutouts in all the windows to mimic Santa's workshop. With the light dusting of snow falling down at the moment, it was a perfect winter wonderland. "Wow, Kaken, this is so..." Izuku's words trailed off as he glanced towards his helper and saw the way the twinkling lights played across Katsuki's face, making his features golden and his eyes sparkle like rubies. And most stunning of all, the victorious smile as he, too, gazed across the fruits of their afternoon's labor. "Beautiful." "Yep. I don't half but things," Katsuki gloated. He turned abruptly towards Izuku, and Izuku felt that darn heart flutter again when their eyes met. "You just going to space out there all day and be a DMN Deku? Or are you going to help me get ready to greet these kids?" "Oh, yeah, let me get the refreshments ready." Izuku dashed off, hoping Katsuki didn't see the way his cheeks were slightly heating. It wasn't his fault, damn it. Katsuki was just too handsome. And honestly, Izuku didn't expect Katsuki to work as hard as he did to decorate the cabin or to stick around for when Mirio arrived with the orphans. Katsuki was full of surprises. And all those surprises were making Izuku reevaluate the preconceived notions he had about the man. The sound of bells and laughter grew louder, and Izuku stood at the front of the yard, cups and a kettle of hot cocoa in his hands. He could see a horse-drawn sleigh coming down the winding road to the Todoroki estate. And when it parked on the curb, Izuku was swamped by the ecstatic children leaping out of it in an instant. Did you guys really miss me that much?" Izuku joked as Katsuki snatched the hot kettle out of his hands so it wouldn't spill. "Yes." A chorus of voices called, except the one, no way, that came from Koda. "Everyone stay together. Mirio commanded, catching up with them. Let Izuku show you around. The children must have already had some sugar, because they were zipping around the lawn, exploring the fake North Pole that Izuku and Katsuki had created. Izuku spied Eri in the back of the crowd, clinging to Koda's hand nervously. With a smile in her direction, Izuku said, "Everyone, welcome to Santa's workshop." He led the kids down the path of lights, stopping at the different displays and making up funny stories about the penguins and reindeers to keep them engaged. Everyone seemed to be having a great time. When they got to the front of the cabin, Eri peeked into one window at the cutouts inside. "Izuku-san," her timid voice questioned. "What is that next to the elf?" "That, Eri," he started, leaning down to her level and pointing at the winged white cutout next to the green elf cutout, "is a fairy." And then Izuku saw something that brightened his heart more than any of the Christmas lights he had strung up, Eri's face lighting up with a big, beautiful smile. And behind the two, unnoticed by either of them, crimson eyes softened as they gazed on Izuku. Maybe Izuku was just seeing things, but he could have sworn the energy changed between him and Katsuki after the day of the orphanage's sleigh ride. When Katsuki came by the house, apparently the generator was being finicky, so he was stopping over a lot. Izuku no longer shied away, emerging from the library or pausing his movie to offer a "Hi, Kakin." And instead of some insult, Katsuki would give him a nod, or even a returning, "Sup, Snow Bunny." Izuku still didn't like the nickname, but he supposed a win was a win. Katsuki sounds like he's grown into such a nice young man. Inko gushed over the phone. Izuku had called her while he shoveled snow out of the driveway. It had piled up, and he was worried Katsuki wouldn't be able to park next time he came by. "I don't know if nice is the right word," Izuku huffed, "but he sure is something." "Oh, something, Inko lilted in that particular tone of hers, and Izuku groaned. "It's not like that, Mom." Just because Izuku was finally starting to appreciate Katsuki's spiky personality, it didn't mean Katsuki cared about Izuku at all. "We're not close. He's just here to fix things when they break. He barely talks to me." Inko laughed, accepting her son's refute. Mitsuki calls him a brat, but she's always been one to criticize. It's how she shows her love. After Izuku shared Bakugo Mitsuki's number with his mom, the two women had been in frequent communication. Apparently, they got along as well as when they were young. So well that Inko then added, "By the way, honey, Mitsuki invited me to come by for wine and dinner, so I'm going to be staying with you the weekend before Christmas. Do you think that would be all right with Shoto's family? I don't want to intrude." How about intruding on me, Izuku thought, but of course did not say since he did miss his mother after some time away from her. He'd have to shift his studying schedule to free up time for her, but Izuku would make it work. "I think that would be fine, but I'll check with Shoto just in case." "Thank you so much, Izuku. Now I have to go. You keep enjoying your vacation, and make sure to bundle up. The news says there's a big storm coming your way." "I will, love you, Mom," Izuku said while he hung up. He dusted some salt along the pavement, and chores being done, hustled back to his books in the library. He was making some good progress on his practice questions when he noticed the room was darker than it should be at this time of morning. Glancing out the window, Izuku could see heavy clouds rolling in. Hadn't his mother mentioned something about a storm? A quick check of the weather website revealed the forecast to be 30 inches of snow starting sometime in the next few hours. That was more snow than Izuku had ever experienced in a single instance. Shoto had warned him that there were occasional snow-ins, and they were fine because they always stocked up on firewood and emergency food in case the power went out. Oh gosh, Izuku had bought supplies on his first trip to town, but he had mostly used up his firewood at this point, and his instant noodles were dwindling too. Izuku put aside his studying and hopped into the jeep, deciding to make another supply run now before the snow really started picking up. It was already coming down pretty hard by the time he reached town. Izuku just wrapped his yellow scarf around his face tighter and hustled to the shops. He bought a few more stacks of firewood, and he made it to the grocery store just in time to grab some canned foods before they closed early for the night. Apparently everyone was trying to get home before the storm hit. "You should probably go home soon too," Azui, the cashier at the grocery store, advised while she checked Izuku out. Aren't you staying in that cabin up the mountain? The Todoroki's place? Yes. And thank you for worrying, Izuku replied. But it should be fine. It doesn't look too bad out there yet. There was only about an inch of fresh snow on the ground. Oh, it's worse up there, Azui warned. It's colder outside of town. The snow freezes up and it's way icier. Ah, I see, Izuku muttered, a bit of worry seeping into him. He hadn't driven in snow too much. He would have to take it slow. All the same, he assured Azui he'd be careful and said bye, letting the woman close up for the evening. Izuku took his time driving the jeep up the winding roads out of Mizudafu, going slowly with the limited visibility he had of the road with the flurries of snow streaming at every window. He was about halfway back to the cabin when his phone pinged with an emergency weather alert. Shelter in place. He looked outside the window. There was nothing but giant snowbanks around him. Yeah, staying in place was not going to happen. He could make it back to the cabin. He just had to keep being careful. And then a gust of wind like a punch hit the side of the car. The storm had really started now. Izuku clutched the wheel, trying to plow past it. But one poorly timed gust on an icy patch of road had the jeep swerving. And next thing he knew, Izuku was staring at a wall of snow, the front of the car lodged in a snowbank. It's okay, just back up, Izuku muttered to himself to avoid panicking. The car didn't budge when he tapped the accelerator, completely unable to start. Okay, plan B, call an emergency service dash. His phone had zero signal. There was bad connection in the roads between the town and the houses. And there's nowhere I'd be able to walk to there, and it wouldn't be safe to walk in this blizzard anyways. All Izuku could think to do was stay there and wait for help. Steeling himself, he left the jeep long enough to tie his scarf to the arch bars on top of the car, and then he bundled himself back up inside. Even those few seconds had chilled him, but at least his scarf was flapping in the wind, very visible to anyone who might be driving by. Izuku didn't know how long had passed. The sky was dark, and at some point, his phone died, leaving him with no way of telling how much time had passed. All he knew was that he was feeling colder and colder. Maybe he'd have to sleep here through the night until the snow plowers came by in the morning. Iku! Come, Izuku, move your lazy butt, damn it. Izuku emerged from his nap to hear someone pounding on the window of his car door. Ha! Izuku, that person gasped. And then their voice turned to venom as they shouted, open the demon door already. Izuku shoved at the handle, pushing through the layer of frost that had built up on the outside of the car, and nearly tumbled into the arms of his savior. His mind was muddled as he finally made out the blonde hair squished under a hood and the fierce red eyes. Kaken? IFNG knew something like this would happen, Katsuki seethed, dragging Izuku out of the jeep by force and hauling him through the wind to his own truck. What the hell were you thinking? The city slicker, trying to drive in a blizzard. That had to get supplies, Izuku managed. Firewood and food and stuff. It's in the trunk. Katsuki shoved him into the passenger seat, and Izuku shuddered in relief at the feeling of the heater going at full power. You stay right there, Katsuki spat, and then he slammed the door on Izuku's face. Izuku obeyed, settling into the cozy car. Not like he really had anywhere to run off to. He was distantly aware of Katsuki clomping around outside some more, and then the truck shook as Katsuki dumped Izuku's purchases into the back seat before climbing inside himself. A soggy scarf was flung next to Izuku. Izuku shuffled in his seat to face Katsuki. Kaken the dash. Don't thank me, dumbass, Katsuki cut him off. Tap your pinky to your thumb. Izuku did so, easing his shaking fingers together to show he didn't have hypothermia, while Katsuki continued to shout at him, driving through the snow. I get a notification about the generator shutting down again hours before a blizzard, and I go to the Todoroki's stupid cabin, and what do I find? Your FING gone. Off to God knows where in the middle of a storm. Kaken, Izuku tried speaking through his shivers. I'm sorry dash. Sorry doesn't mean sheet. They pulled into the cabin's garage, empty since the jeep was currently being buried in snow, and Katsuki yanked Izuku into the living room before he was even aware of his feet touching the ground. Apparently the generator was still broken, so the house was freezing, but Izuku was grateful to be in better shelter. I was looking everywhere for you. Katsuki continued. I had to drive out in this blizzard to try to save your sorry but before you died. Izuku choked up, the panic over the situation he had found himself in suddenly hitting at full power now that he wasn't forcing himself to remain calm. He had really been stranded out there, hadn't he? He could have frozen. He could have gotten buried in snow so deep the snowplowers wouldn't be able to dig him out. He could have put these on, Katsuki spat, throwing some dry clothing at Izuku's face before heading back to the garage. Izuku did as instructed on autopilot, his mind running with all the worst-case scenarios and what he could have done better to avoid all this in the first place. Quit muttering to yourself and sit. Katsuki's voice returning to the room brought him out of his spiral just enough to plop down on a bunch of pillows in front of the couch, close to the fireplace. Katsuki must have put them there when he was distracted. Actually, he was surprised that Katsuki hadn't left after bringing him home. He thought the other man would head out, try to make it home before the roads were completely buried, but here he was, building a fire in the hearth out of the wood Izuku bought and ranting away. You know how much more pathetic your muttering sounds when you're shivering like that? You useless idiot dash. Katsuki cut off what he was saying when he turned around from the now roaring flame and met Izuku's misty eyes. I really am useless. Izuku felt a tear slip down his cheek, and he saw Katsuki jump at the sight. I was in such an unsafe situation, I could have gotten seriously hurt or died. And here I am, still inconveniencing you. I should have done better, but I failed. God, I try so hard to get everything right, I put in as much work as I can, and still, I failed at something so simple dash. Izuku wasn't sure he was just talking about getting trapped in the snowstorm anymore, but he just couldn't stop rambling, the stress from the past weeks, no, the past years, all catching up to him. I have so much to prove, but it seems like no matter how much I do, it's never enough dash. Shut up, Katsuki screamed. But despite the sharp tone, his face was soft as he gazed on Izuku. Geez, you have nothing to cry about. As he spoke, he eased closer, tucking a knitted blanket tightly around the still shaking man. You got all the right supplies, idiot. And you stayed put in a sheltered environment when you got stranded. You weren't that far off the road, so I could tell you weren't driving too fast or unsafely. And tying your scarf to the top of the car was smart. I wouldn't have found you as quickly without it. Izuku listened to the words. It felt like Katsuki was speaking to his very core when he looked him in the eye and said, You did everything right, it was just a shitty situation that you ended up in. So give yourself some credit, dumbass. Coming from someone he hardly knew, from someone who he thought hated his guts, someone who still surprised him at every turn, that message finally hit. Izuku caught Katsuki's wrist when he went to go stoke the fire. Kaken, thank you. And not just for the ride home. Seeing Izuku looking a little calmer, Katsuki's face finally resumed his usual confident smirk. Don't worry about it, nerd. Now scoot over dash. Hey. Wait, what are you doing? Izuku asked in alarm as Katsuki squeezed himself under the blanket as close as he could to Izuku. You're still freezing, idiot. We need to warm you up. Izuku was too exhausted to fight the strong arms wrapping around him and pulling him close. He relaxed into Katsuki's hold, fitting into him like a puzzle piece. Between the warm body hugging him and the heat of the fireplace, Izuku's shivering seemed to finally ease up. He let his brain turn off for the first time since he came out to Mizutofu and relaxed. Something about this felt right. After a few minutes of peaceful silence, something Izuku hadn't realized Katsuki was capable of, a memory from this evening resurfaced in Izuku's mind. Kaken, he squirmed around to look at Katsuki. Did I hear you call me Izuku earlier? Katsuki rolled his eyes and looked away. You wish, Snow Bunny. Izuku could see a red blush peeking out from the neck of Katsuki's sweater. He grinned to himself. Whatever you say, Katsuki. Izuku blinked himself awake from his second nap, finding himself alone in front of the fireplace, where just ash remained. It took him a few moments to remember how he got there, how cold and scared he had been earlier, seeming like some distant memory now that he was warm and safe in his home. It felt like it was all a dream. Especially Katsuki, how caring he had been, how softly he held Izuku. And then Izuku heard the sound of pots clinking and grumbled curses coming from his kitchen, and he knew it had all been real. Unable to keep a small smile from his face, Izuku untangled himself from the knitted blanket and snuck over to the doorway, observing Katsuki making himself at home in the Todoroki's kitchen. He clearly had fixed the generator since the heating was on in the house, and he had 2 pots on the stove. The savory smell coming from the pots had Izuku's stomach grumbling, and red eyes snapped to him. "Your pantry is stocked terribly," Katsuki grumbled as he assembled a bowl of rice and curry from the pots. "No fresh ingredients. If I wasn't a god at cooking, that gross canned crap you got would taste horrible on its own." Izuku shook his head, feeling guilty for being such a burden that Katsuki even stuck around to make dinner for him. "Kaken, I'm sorry, you didn't have to do that dash." "Why not?" "I'm hungry." Katsuki plopped down at the dining table, setting the bowl in front of himself and digging in. He was cooking for himself. That made more sense. Izuku drifted to the window, now noticing that the snow was piled up nearly to the ledge. Katsuki had been snowed in with him. And from the way Katsuki was glaring into his food like he was going to kill something, he was not happy about it. Looks like we're trapped in here," Izuku tried, and Katsuki grunted in response. "Any idea when we'll be able to get out?" Izuku hadn't dealt with being snowed in like this before, so he had no idea how long it would last. "Snow plowers will start first thing tomorrow morning," Katsuki said. "This far out, they probably won't clear the roads until noon. I won't make it in time to open dynamite tomorrow." "Oh, I'm sorry," Izuku replied, automatically seeing the man's upsetness and feeling another stab of guilt at causing Katsuki trouble. But then he spotted a second bowl of dinner hiding behind the pots, along with a steaming mug of the tea Izuku favored when he was studying. Smiling to himself at another instance of Katsuki's hidden kindness, Izuku grabbed his serving and sat down with the other man, enjoying the dinner together. It was the first home-cooked meal he'd had since the katsudon bento his mom packed him before he left. And, though it was a bit spicy for Izuku's tastes, it was comforting in a way his usual ramen and microwave meals could never measure up to. He didn't notice the crimson eyes watching him with satisfaction as he scarfed down every last bite, humming contentedly at the taste. "Dutso, you studying again later?" Katsuki broke the silence after a few minutes. "Yeah, it was in my schedule to work on writing." Izuku glanced at Katsuki and saw the way he was averting his eyes as if unwilling to ask what he actually wanted to. "But I don't have to." "Why?" Katsuki shrugged. "Just wondering. If you're doing boring crap, don't let me get in your way." It took some analyzing of Katsuki's face and some mental math for Izuku to realize that this was maybe Katsuki's roundabout way of asking if Izuku was free to hang out. He was probably bored having to spend the night in an unfamiliar home and had nothing to do. So as the host, even though Katsuki didn't seem to like him very much, Izuku should keep him company, right? "Actually, I still have some decorating to do inside the cabin. I could use an extra set of hands." "Just if you feel like it," Izuku tried. Seeing how Katsuki perked up in that subtle way of his at the offer made pushing back his studying for one night worth it. "Sure, I can help, nerd. It better not be that lame all-white sheet that I saw you putting up outside before I got here." "No. I ruined some of the Todoroki's decorations when the snow spray exploded. Forget about that. So I bought some of my own to replace them. Plus, I wanted some decorations that were a little more colorful since that's how my mom and I decorate at home." He had learned after his decorating fiasco on the day of the orphanage's annual sleigh ride and made good use of the various Christmas shops in town, shopping for all sorts of things he could put up inside, plus his mom shipped him a box of their old ornaments. Katsuki stood from his chair. "Lead the way, Snow Bunny." Surprisingly, decorating with Katsuki was really fun this time around without the time crunch they had when they had decorated the lawn together. Katsuki harped about the cheesy Christmas tunes Izuku insisted on playing while they worked, and he nitpicked Izuku on the placement of every little string light and wreath he put up. But for some reason, it only made Izuku endeared to his attitude. He found himself smiling a lot, and he would catch Katsuki smiling between his smirks, too. "I should have known you'd have all might ornaments," Katsuki mocked, passing the ornament to Izuku, who stood on the steps tool to place ornaments around the fake tree they assembled by the fireplace. And this one's the 2009 limited edition too. You really are a nerd. Hey, doesn't being able to recognize it make you a nerd too? Izuku quipped, and Katsuki huffed a snort that Izuku could now tell was amusement. He hung the ornament close to the top of the tree and reached down for Katsuki to pass him another one. At least the design is cool, Katsuki remarked. Where'd you get all these, anyway? I recognize this sparkly one from that Twinkly Extra store. It took Izuku a second to realize who Twinkly Extra was, and he took the ornament from Katsuki. My mom sent me some from home, like my favorite All Might ones, but yeah, I couldn't resist buying some new things from Aoyama-san's shop. He had a lot of items I like including this? Katsuki drawled, and worried about his mischievous tone. Izuku glanced down to see him holding a branch of mistletoe. Katsuki smirked again. You planning on smooching someone, Snow Bunny? That's just something extra Aoyama tried to give me as a thanks for my purchase. I tried to say no, but he must have snuck it into my bag anyway. Izuku rushed to explain as he stumbled down from the stepladder to snatch the incriminating branch and shove it back in the box. Incidentally, this action brought him much closer to Katsuki, and he could feel the way his cheeks heated under Katsuki's teasing gaze. Dimon, I should have hung that earlier before Katsuki got here. Wait, why am I thinking that? The rest of the ornaments went up without issue, and the mistletoe stayed discreetly away, and soon, Izuku and Katsuki were happily surveying their work in the foyer and living room. The twinkling rainbow lights danced beautifully, and Izuku made sure not to look Katsuki's way in case the lighting on Katsuki's handsome face made his heart flutter in that unhelpful way again. Ding, you really did bring the whole collection, huh? Katsuki commented, crouched by the stack of old DVDs Izuku left by the TV. You even have World Heroes Mission. He pulled the case out from the bunch that Inko had packed for Izuku and surveyed it with fake nonchalance. I haven't had the chance to rewatch that one yet, Izuku said, coming up beside Katsuki. He checked the grandfather clock in the corner. It wasn't too late right now. Izuku grinned up at Katsuki. What do you say we make good on that bet? There's time to watch a movie before bed. Hell yeah, nerd, Katsuki answered and flopped himself down on the couch. Izuku set up the DVD player the Todorokis luckily still had and joined him. He kept a normal distance between them as the movie played. It was calming, enjoying an old movie with someone with the same tastes. Though part of Izuku was itching for Katsuki to get closer and hold him like he did in front of the fireplace. Katsuki cheered enthusiastically along with Izuku at the final battle of the movie, and he went quiet when the resolution of the movie was underway. As expected, Izuku felt himself tearing up at the heartfelt moment where the characters had to say goodbye to each other and return to their separate countries. He glanced over to see if Katsuki was as stone-faced as he insisted he would be, prepared for the other to tease him about being a crybaby again, but Izuku was surprised to find his face lax and soft. He was snoozing, leaned against the back of the couch. Looks like Katsuki was an early sleeper. Izuku chuckled as quietly as possible to himself, shutting off the movie and draping a blanket over Katsuki as gently as possible. He let himself take one more look at the man, letting his heart flutter in the way he'd been trying to avoid all night, before he shut off the lights and went upstairs to get himself ready for bed. The next morning drifted by peacefully too. After getting the best night of sleep he'd had in a while, Izuku dragged himself downstairs to find that Katsuki had cooked them some breakfast. It was just as satisfying as the dinner he made. They shoveled the driveway post-breakfast, ending up in a competition to see who could shovel the most snow, that then just dissolved into an all-out snowball fight by the time the plowers appeared down the road. Once the roads were cleared, Katsuki was kind enough to drive Izuku back to where they left the Jeep, and they dug it out and were able to get it started again. Izuku sunk into the driver's seat in relief, glad that he wouldn't have to pay the Todorokis back for destroying their car. Thank you for helping me so much, Kaken. Thanks for letting me crash at your place, Katsuki grunted in response. He was probably relieved to be free of Izuku. But for some reason he seemed to be hesitating to get back into his truck and go home, heavy boots scuffing the snow on the side of the road. Hey, I know you've been to town during the day, but have you checked out the Christmas night market yet? Izuku blinked, distracted from the question by the cute red tinge coloring Katsuki's cheeks from the cold air. The what? Katsuki scoffed. Damn it, I should have known you didn't know anything about what goes on in Mizudafu, you shitty city slicker. He stormed up to Izuku with a fearsome air and shoved a crumpled post-it note at him. Looks like I'll have to drag you out there myself. Text me what night you're free this week. And with that, he stomped to the truck faster than Izuku had ever seen him move and drove away. Uncrumpling the post, Izuku made out a 10-digit phone number. Did Katsuki just ask him on a date? He laughed giddily to himself, letting that attraction he'd been trying to ignore ever since meeting Katsuki bloom. Looks like Katsuki's blush might not have just been from the cold. A picture of the view from the library window. A fresh batch of cookies decorated with care. A peppermint mocha he had indulged in next to his textbook seated in Ochako's cafe. That's more sugar than coffee, dummy, it'll just give you a stomach ache. The red truck parked near the entrance to the cinnamon farm that apparently existed just outside of town limits. Cinnamon comes from trees? Yeah. It's the bark. Do you harvest it yourself? Of course. Who do you think I am? A daring selfie wearing a rare All Might sweater he thought Kakin might like, which was fortunately returned with a selfie of Kakin in a hairnet and apron. How he still managed to look handsome in that getup, Izuku didn't know. They had mostly been communicating through pictures since Katsuki had shared his number with Izuku, both pussyfooting around actual conversation. On Izuku's part, he was too nervous that the night of the blizzard had all just been a fluke. All their earlier interactions had been awkward and argumentative. It was strange to think that Katsuki actually wanted to spend time with him after their rough start. Texting a follow-up on Katsuki's offer to take him out might just make Katsuki feel pressured when he didn't actually want to bother with Izuku after all. Ochako grabbed his phone from where it sat on the counter and slammed it in front of Izuku, sending a few of his papers fluttering out of the way. Text him. Huh. Izuku replied intelligently as he scrambled to gather his fallen materials. Who? The barista rolled her eyes fondly. Zuku, honey, you've been muttering to yourself about Bakugo nonstop since you came into my cafe this morning. It's about time you man up and ask him out. It sounds like he's interested. I don't know about that, Izuku denied, his face flushing at his internal struggle being overheard. Of course he'd complained to Ochako about Katsuki before, but he left out their recent shift in dynamic. I mean, he was probably just being nice, offering to show me around the night market since I'm not from around here. He probably doesn't actually want to do it. Zuku, I've known Bakugo since elementary school. If there's one thing I know about him, it's that he doesn't do shit he doesn't want to do. Is that an exact quote? Ochako laughed. Pretty much. But I'm serious. Bakugo is an antisocial a-hole dash. Okay, harsh. So if he showed you any thoughtfulness at all, it's a guarantee that he likes you. Izuku flushed very obviously, thinking about all the thoughtful gestures Katsuki had been giving him lately, and Ochako locked in, a mischievous look in her eye. Ooh, that's not the face of someone who only knows Bakugo through fighting. You better spill. The next hour was spent recapping the night they were snowed in. It started with Ochako's shock about the hidden sweet side her mean classmates secretly had, to Ochako cooing at stories of them cuddling and decorating together, to Ochako helping him draft a text and hitting that daunting send button. I have some time free tomorrow to go to the Christmas night market, if you are still willing to take me? Izuku wilted with embarrassment, all the worst-case scenarios going through his head based on his past struggles with relationships. Ochako, his so-called friend, only laughed at his plight. But Izuku didn't have to mope for long, because only a few minutes passed before his phone buzzed. I'll pick you up at 5 p.m. Dress warmly. Without warning, Ochako yanked his textbook out of the way and slammed it shut. No studying. You, my sweet summer child, have a date to get ready for. The next day was a blur of humming happily around the house in anticipation and being a bundle of stress and self-doubt. It's not like Izuku was scared of Katsuki anymore, but Katsuki was so unlike anyone he's dated before. They were always other scholars in his class who were from an upper-income family and fixated on getting the best job they could. Izuku had admired their drive to be successful. It just tended to end when lifestyles just didn't match up anymore. And the way Katsuki lived was so different from Izuku no longer swamped in classes and networking and trying to socially climb. He lived by his own standards. Besides, maybe Izuku was overthinking things as he was prone to do. Despite Ochako's insistence, tonight might not even be a date. Maybe they were just going together as friends, which was better than whatever strange rivalry they had before. All Izuku knew was that, date or not, part of him was thrilled to get to see more sides of Katsuki. So Izuku tried not to fret himself into a tizzy as he picked his outfit for the night market, his usual jacket and scarf, plus a hat since he knew Katsuki would berate him for not dressing warmly enough. If his jeans were a little more fitted than his normal pants, it was totally by chance. An angry horn sounded outside, and Izuku rushed to the door, charmed that Katsuki was standing beside his truck holding the passenger seat door open for him. That was 1 point in the date category. Granted, the grimace Katsuki wore was a point for not date, because who the heck glares at someone they like that? Get in already, Katsuki demanded, storming around the car to hop into the driver's seat. I rushed all this way to get this batch to you warm. Kaken, you brought snickerdoodles? Izuku gasped excitedly when he saw the box sitting between the car seats. He quickly buckled in and they drove off. Try it now. I'm willing to bet that you didn't get the chance to eat one when I made that batch for the orphanage, Katsuki grumbled. Katsuki wasn't looking at him, focused on the road ahead, so Izuku did as he said, taking out a beautifully decorated cookie and biting into the slightly gooey warm texture. Kaken, this is so good. I told you I'm the best baker, didn't I? Yes. You're amazing. And subtly, only noticeable because Izuku was already looking at him so intently, he saw Katsuki loosen up from that gruff exterior. Looks like Katsuki had been nervous for tonight too. With a small grin matching the one Katsuki was trying to hide, Izuku turned back to the windshield, watching the winter wonderland speed by like when he was on the train. Somehow, it seemed even more beautiful with someone by his side. So, where to first? Izuku asked when they pulled into town and walked into the lines of stalls that had been put up in the central square. They had red-striped counters with string lights tying everything together. Izuku recognized some of the store owners manning the stalls selling souvenir goods from their stores or running Christmas-themed activities. It really was magical. Izuku was touched that Katsuki thought of bringing him here. Katsuki shrugged. You picked Snow Bunny. You're the one who hasn't seen it yet. Izuku looked around, his mind running in a million places at once with how much he wanted to try here, until he recognized a spiky-haired someone waving at him from the edge of the crowd by the pond. Oh, I promised Kirishima and Ashido that I'd give skating a try. Should we go there first? Katsuki grimaced. Anything but those idiots dash. But whatever he was about to say was lost as a beefy arm flung around his shoulders. Yo, Baku bro, Kirishima greeted, having sprinted over to them after waving. I didn't expect you to come by the market this year. You always grumble about how it's always the same. He eyed Izuku knowingly. It must take a special someone to drag you out here, oof. Just get us our demon skates already, shitty hair, Katsuki grumbled, stomping towards the stall by the pond's entrance as if he didn't just elbow his apparent friend in the gut. Kirishima just laughed and led Izuku after him. Well, Midoriya, your prince awaits. He fitted Izuku and Katsuki with the skates stored behind the counter in the stall and helped Izuku lace up properly, and then sent them off onto the frozen pond with a supportive shove. Woich! Izuku immediately flailed, clinging onto the fence lining the ice. Dang, skating wasn't as easy as it looked in all those Christmas movies. Or as easy as Katsuki was making it look now. He whizzed by with that teasing smirk. Lose your balance already? What kind of a snow bunny can't get around on ice? Oh, stop taunting him. You're just as bad at trash talk as you were in high school, a new voice interrupted, and he felt hands firmly plant on his shoulders to stabilize him before he was face to face with Ashido. She gave him a cheeky smile. Don't mind him, he's just got a big head from his hockey days. Kaken, you used to play hockey? Izuku chirped. He ignored Ashido's giggles at the silly nickname. Sure did, nerd. He gloated before speeding off into a lap at an impressive pace, easily passing the scattering of other skaters. And I was good. Think you can catch up? Izuku's gaze sharpened at the challenge, and Katsuki smirked. He'll be wiping the ice with your butt so hard that Eiji won't have to run the Zamboni tonight, Ishido shouted. And well, that seemed a bit much, but… Okay, Midoriya, stand with your feet farther apart and don't lock your legs. I teach lessons, so you're in good hands. She talked him through the basics, and nerd that he was, Izuku paid close attention to every word and applied it. Ishido led him on a lap around the rink as Katsuki hovered nearby, exchanging more taunts that Izuku and Ishido fired right back at him. Izuku found himself laughing so much he nearly slipped again a few times. It was fun seeing this playful side that Katsuki had with his friends. And Izuku felt right at home in it. It definitely took the pressure off of this maybe not date. And then Ishido said, okay, it looks like you've got the hang of it, and I need to go assist more people, so I'm leaving him in your hands, Katsuki. She took Izuku's hand and smacked it into Katsuki's. Don't let him fall. Izuku let out a breath that misted beautifully around Katsuki's nearby face, green eyes locking onto red. They stared at each other for a moment, hands clasped and breathless from the exertion. And then Izuku gave him a confident grin, challenge not forgotten, that had Katsuki chuckling. So, you going to slow me down, Deku? I've gotten a lot better. I won't fall behind. Despite the competitiveness, they stayed together, skating at Izuku's pace and giddily holding hands. Katsuki pulled him into a few fast turns that had Izuku's heart racing, but he managed to stay upright, Ishido's lessons seared into him already. Eventually they drifted out to the center of the pond, slowly turning at a relaxing pace. With silver bells playing on the speakers, it almost felt like a dance. Izuku let himself admire Katsuki's face beneath the twinkling lights, unabashedly now that he could tell Katsuki was admiring his back. Huh, I guess you really can move, nerd. I wasn't sure since you're always sitting around every time I see you. Hey, it's not sitting around. I'm studying for law school. Izuku cut himself off, reminding himself that Katsuki wasn't talking about that. He was defensive over something he worked so hard for, wanted for so long. He had to loosen up a bit. But yeah, I spend a lot of time inside. Shoto will be glad you took me out tonight. The song shifted into Izuku's favorite, All I Want for Christmas Is You, and Katsuki shook his head with a knowing smirk. I'll make sure to take you out more then. Even if law school is what you want, I never see you as happy when your nose is in the books as you look now. Oh, I don't. Izuku struggled to explain why his studying was so important with how strongly he felt himself blushing at the way Katsuki was looking at him. Softly, like that time in front of the fireplace, like he was seeing something in Izuku that Izuku couldn't see for himself. That I'd like for you to take me out more. He hadn't really meant to say that, but his heart leapt when Katsuki replied, Sure, Snowbunny. Oopsies. Ishido suddenly skated right up to Izuku, giving him a hip check that sent his feet skidding beneath him. Izuku was sure he was about to faceplant into the ice, but strong arms wrapped around his waist, and he was tugged into a cozy embrace. Watch it, raccoon eyes. Katsuki barked, bundling Izuku closer, and Izuku couldn't find it in himself to complain. You okay? Izuku hummed, letting himself enjoy the closeness. He knows it wasn't under the best circumstances, but wow, he hadn't realized how much he missed this embrace. They held each other as Ishido skated around, throwing a wink at Katsuki. I knew you wouldn't let him fall. The rest of the evening was spent exploring the market for trinkets and making a dinner out of the snacks sold at the food stalls. He found lovely new earrings for his mom and a scarf for Shoto, packaging the presents at a gift-wrapping station by the Christmas tree. The snacks were good, but, well, nothing was beating Katsuki's cookies. And he made sure to tell Katsuki that just to see the way he sparked with the compliments. It was a perfect night, and it only got better when he spotted a familiar form in the crowd. Mirio, hello. He called up, clasping Katsuki's hand to tug him over to where a small group of the orphans were assembled. Hello, Midoriya and Bakugo-san. The kids, and Mirio, funnily enough, chorused to them. Eri's eyes lit up in that way they always did when Izuku was around, and she shuffled closer to take his free hand. What are you all doing here? Izuku inquired. Santa Claus comes here every year to get all the children's Christmas lists, so I always take the kids to sit on his lap. But in groups of 4 so it's easier to stick together in the crowd. Wow, you all must be so excited. Izuku trailed off when he noticed Eri stiffen as she gazed on the Santa impersonator at the end of the line. Right, Eri had been rescued from an abusive household, and it made sense that she might be stressed around strangers, even the kindly-looking man acting as Santa. So, wanting to remind her that she's safe and to help her get over her anxieties, Izuku found himself offering, "Can I go see Santa with you? It's been a long time since I got to talk to him." Eri nodded, and with Mirio's permission, Izuku and Katsuki waited with them and entertained the kids. They all talked Izuku's ear off about what they wanted, and when they got to the front of the line, Katsuma and Mahoro eagerly dashed up to Santa, followed by a slightly more cool and collected Koda. "Okay, Eri, go ahead," Mirio encouraged. But the little girl just cast her wide eyes on Izuku. "You can go first." Well, Izuku stuttered, not actually planning on doing anything. It was only kids talking to Santa, after all. But under Eri's hesitant gaze and Katsuki's challenging one, Izuku squared his shoulders and replied, "Sure, thanks Eri." Thankfully, the Santa impersonator didn't seem baffled by a full-grown adult walking up to him, giving him the widest smile that made the blue in his sunken eyes twinkle behind the hat and fake beard he wore. "And what is your name, young man?" "Hi, I'm Midoriya Izuku." He tried to speak clearly even though a few frowns were being sent his way by parents. Katsuki was snickering at his attempts to maintain dignity. "Sorry I'm up here, it's just for this little girl, she asked me to dash." "Well, it's nice to meet you, young Midoriya. I think you already know who I am," the man joked, and Izuku laughed along with him, relieved that he hadn't gotten into another one of his muttering bursts. "Now tell me, young Midoriya, what do you want?" It was the question that Santa asked all the kids, but something about the way he was looking at Izuku seemed to have a deeper meaning. So Izuku thought about it, trying to respond as honestly as he could. "I want for my hard work to pay off, but I don't really know what that will look like yet." The shining image of law school flashed through his mind. "I guess I want to be great at what I do. I want to prove myself." Santa chuckled. "Young Midoriya, I can't give you what you already have. Is there anything else you want?" The words stirred something in Izuku. He didn't know what to say. But Santa was still waiting for his reply. Izuku's gaze subconsciously flickered to Katsuki as he stalled. And he didn't have to stall long, because Santa suddenly said, "I see. Well, I might be able to help with that." Izuku had no idea what the man was walking about. He tried to brush it off, divert his attention to Eri as she bravely approached the kind man, though he was still in a bit of a daze while they exchanged introductions. But he tuned back in when he heard Eri say, "I want Midoriya-san to celebrate Christmas with me." "Ah, Eri, of course I'll spend Christmas with you." Izuku was touched. He crouched down to her level and patted her head. "I'd be honored to spend the holiday with you and all the others at the orphanage." He had no plans for Christmas Eve, and he couldn't imagine spending it in a better way. "Well, that's settled," Santa applauded with a hearty laugh. "I'll surprise you with a gift on Christmas Eve then. Does that sound good, young Eri?" "Sure, Mr. Claus." Eri was smiling the bright smile of hers from the moment they left Santa to the moment Izuku and Katsuki split up with them for the night. He was glad she was learning to have fun. He just hoped she keeps growing after he leaves Mizudafu for law school. "You're great with kids," Katsuki observed on their way out of the Christmas night market, and Izuku laughed it off. But Katsuki held firm. "Seriously, you practically just met them, and they're already as open to you as they are with Mirio. And your load's better than the lame schoolteacher." "Hey," Izuku objected to the insult, and Katsuki waved his hands in front of him to explain himself. "I didn't mean to be mean, it's just, sometimes my words come out like that. I get that Aizawa-sensei does his best, but he's overworked and too burnt out to keep up with youngsters the way he used to. That guy could honestly use some help. All I meant is that it's good for them to have another adult in their lives that they can look up to. Especially one who's as hardworking and kind as you." Izuku didn't know how to respond to Katsuki's surprisingly heartfelt compliment. It was like the night in front of the fireplace when he told Izuku to give himself some credit. Izuku didn't expect this from someone who's always been so prideful and snarky to him in the past. Maybe that was what made the sweet words hit that much harder. "Thank you," he eventually muttered, sinking into the passenger seat of the truck and focusing on the road ahead while Katsuki drove him home in the hopes that Katsuki wouldn't notice his blush. Tonight was fun, Izuku admitted when Katsuki walked him to the cabin's front door. The cheesy date trope made him stifle a giggle at how secretly romantic Katsuki was. "Thanks for showing me the night market, even though you've been before." "No sweat, Snowbunny. It was less boring this time with you around." And this time, Izuku did snicker at Katsuki's usual gruffness returning. They paused outside of the door. "I haven't seen this side of you before. Relaxed and happy." "Well, there are a lot of sides I haven't seen of you," Izuku replied, bravely adding, "Maybe we can do this again so I can get to know more?" "Sure. You have my number, so just let me know when," Katsuki replied. This night was perfect. Izuku was unabashedly beaming at Katsuki and Katsuki was beaming back. With peace in his heart, Izuku unlocked the door and threw it open. And stopped dead in his tracks at what he found hanging in the foyer. The branch of mistletoe. The one he had thought he shoved to the bottom of the box of decorations. "Oh, this is not Dash," Izuku flustered, rushing to explain that he hadn't put that there, but his words died in his throat when Katsuki let out a laugh and cupped his face. "You cheeky bastard." His head was drawn forward, and next thing Izuku knew was Katsuki's lips on his, coaxing them to move together pleasantly and sending tingles down Izuku's spine. When he drew away, Izuku was left breathless. Katsuki smirked at the state he left the other man in. "You could have just asked for a goodnight kiss, Snowbunny. No need to be so sneaky about it with the mistletoe if this was all you wanted." And staring at Katsuki shining under the twinkling lights they hung together, in front of a cabin in a small town far from the hectic and cutthroat world he'd known all his life, Izuku realized that maybe what he wanted wasn't what he thought it was. Everything about Mizudafu felt like a holiday dream. The beautiful scenery, the jolly atmosphere, the handsome baker that somehow took an interest in Izuku beyond his impressive resume and prospective success. Every date with Katsuki since the first made Izuku feel a vigor for life that had faded long ago. Katsuki challenged him. Not to study hard and ace his tests, but to take what was in front of him and make it the best. They had taken the orphans sledding on the nearby hills. They went to the local pub, where Izuku got to meet more of Katsuki's friends. Katsuki had taken him to the cinnamon farm and shown him how to harvest the freshest bark. Izuku had dusted off the Todoroki's old chessboard and taught Katsuki how to play in front of the fireplace one evening, though the game quickly devolved when their competitive arguing brought their faces a little too close together over the board to stay focused. And between dates, they rewatched the old All Might movies. Truly a dream indeed. But the thing about dreams was, they always ended once you woke up. And so their kisses stayed just kisses, their affectionate smiles were brushed away when the other noticed, and their conversations never strayed to the future. As much as some budding feeling was blossoming in Izuku, he knew there was no sense in getting too close to Katsuki since he'd just have to leave once the year was over to return to his law school pursuits. Which was the other point of contention, since Izuku never felt fulfilled by school the way he did when he was helping the children at the orphanage. Between getting to understand Katsuki's way of living and his recent realizations about himself, Izuku was rethinking everything. His mom would have good advice. She always knew how to encourage Izuku to focus on his long-term goals rather than stress on his options in the moment. So when Inko hopped off the train at Mizudafu Station, overpacked suitcase in tow, a wave of relief washed over him. "Mom!" He shouted across the platform, and he saw his mom perk in delight when she spotted him. "Izuku! Oh dear, don't worry about that, you'll strain your back." It apparently took Inko no time to start fussing over her son again, and Izuku stifled a laugh as he ignored her warning and took her heavy suitcase from her anyway. "I'll be okay, Mom. I'm a lot stronger now than when I was little," Izuku assured her, easily handling the luggage. Together they made their way to where he parked the jeep. "Oh, I know that. Moms just worry, you know. And after not seeing you for so long, with you so far away Dash. Everything is fine, seriously. You raised me well, Mom, I can take care of myself. But I did really miss you, he added, just to appease the easily scared woman. Now, I've told you about the town, but you've barely told me anything about how things are back in Hosu. Not much has changed, his mother began in that particular tone of voice. But Hannah, the one from work who was peering, you remember her? Well, she's due early January, and get this, she still wants to host us for a New Year's Eve party. Can you believe it? Why, when I was that PR'd with you, I didn't want to do anything but rest my feet and order takeout food, definitely not host a bunch of coworkers. Yeah, that's crazy, Izuku muttered, and his mother was off, muttering even more rambly than her son. He wanted to talk about his recent confusion over his wants in life, but there just didn't seem to be a break in the conversation for it. Well, it was still fun to gossip with his mom like he always did back at home. The discussion could wait for the right time. But by the time they made their way back to the Todoroki estate, unpacked Inko's things in Fuyumi's bedroom that she was kind enough to let Inko borrow, and given Inko a tour of the cabin filled with many pauses to ooh and ah at how nice it was already approaching the time they were supposed to be meeting at the Bakugo's residence. So, Izuku just put his concerns aside and decided to enjoy himself this evening. He was happy his mom could reunite with a childhood friend. And on another note, he would be meeting Katsuki's parents. Izuku managed to steel himself at the moment the Bakugo's front door swung open to reveal a woman who looked exactly like the female version of Katsuki. Hi. My name is Izuku Midoriya. Huh, I didn't realize Kaken had a sister? But his confusion was cleared up when the woman shouted an enthusiastic, "Inko," and his mom responded, "Mitsuki." And they hugged each other like no time had passed at all. When they finally pulled away, she threw Izuku that smirk that apparently ran in the Bakugo family. Sister? I like this kid. You've raised a smart son, Inko. I wish my brat was half as adorable. Ah, it's nothing, Izuku is just such a good boy all on his own. And I'm sure your Katsuki is too. Will he be joining us? Inko asked, and Izuku couldn't help but peek into the front hall for that striking glare. Mitsuki nodded. Oi brat. The guests have arrived. Quit being rude and come greet them. Shut it, hag. I was going to say hi, I was just helping Dad with something in the kitchen, Katsuki grumbled, stalking towards them. For a second, their eyes met, and Izuku's heart leapt. And then he turned to Inko and held out a hand. Katsuki Bakugo. I heard your mom's friend? It's nice to meet you. Izuku smirked watching Katsuki try to make a good impression on his mom. He wanted to tease him, but they had to behave today with their parents present. He shook hands with Inko elegantly and Izuku could see how charmed she was. And then the effect was ruined with Mitsuki clapping her son hard on the back. You're actually acting polite for once? Good for you, trying to make a good impression on my friend Dash. And then Mitsuki's eyes widened in realization as she caught the embarrassed look Katsuki sent to Izuku. Or trying to make a good impression on someone else. Izuku, darling, you must be a wonderful influence on my brat. Oh no, if anything, Kaken has been a wonderful influence on me, Izuku stuttered. And then his own mom's eyes widened in realization, catching the sweet look he couldn't help but throw Katsuki. So much for being subtle about their relationship. Izuku should have known his mom was enough of a gossip to sniff out a secret in no time. But if the moms recognized that Izuku and Katsuki's relationship went beyond platonic acquaintances, they didn't mention anything, moving on as soon as a quaint-looking man stepped into the front hall and asked, "Dear, the vintage Merlot has finished airing out. Would you like to offer your friend a glass?" Mitsuki linked arms with Inko and led her further into the house. Thank you, darling. Inko, you remember Masaru from college? Lovely to see you again, Inko. Katsuki's dad nodded. You too, Masaru. Wow, what a great couple, college sweethearts, and now with a beautiful home and family. The women beelined for the decanter of wine as soon as the party entered the dining room, and Izuku internally winced at the heavy pour Mitsuki gave her friend. Oh gosh, Mom is kind of a lightweight, he muttered, low enough that only Katsuki could hear. Katsuki leveled him with a stare. Well sheet. The hag is too. I guess we're in for a wild night, huh? Izuku took one look at Katsuki's serious face and snorted a laugh. And that had Katsuki breaking too. It felt good to be laughing with him as their families mingled. It felt natural. "Izuku, would you like a glass?" Masaru asked, and Izuku quickly took the glass he was offered, not wanting to be rude. He could have just one drink. It would wear off by the time he had to drive home. "Thank you, Bakugo-san. It's nice to meet you. I'm Midoriya Izuku." He bowed as best he could, and now it was Katsuki's turn to smirk at his attempts to make a good impression. Katsuki had talked about his parents, his mom mostly, and how annoying she was. But in the few times Katsuki spoke of his dad, it was clear how much the kindly man's opinion mattered to him. "You too," Masaru hummed back. "I've heard great things about you from my boy. He always talks about how you dash." "Hey, no need to talk about boring shit." Katsuki cut him off, grabbing Izuku's wrist and pulling him away. "Come on, I'll give you a tour of the house before dinner." His voice was gruff, but Izuku could see the red creeping up his neck. He stifled his chuckle under a sip of wine. Even though Katsuki seemed to be embarrassed, it was nice to know that he talked about Izuku to others. "Alright, have fun. Would you like a glass of wine too before you go?" "Nah, I'll have a taste later." Katsuki yanked Izuku down the hall towards a flight of stairs, letting Masaru get back to the chattering moms. Izuku let out a sigh of relief now that they were alone. Helping his mom get settled and meeting Katsuki's parents drained him more than he expected. He was so drained he didn't pay attention to any of the house until they were entering a bedroom, very minimalist but with stylish furniture and a scattering of cookbooks on the desk. Plus one all-might figure decorating the bedside table. Izuku gasped in delight, turning to Katsuki, "Is this your room dash?" He cut himself off when he noticed Katsuki shut the door and stalked towards him. "Yep." Izuku blushed as Katsuki slowly cupped his cheek. "What are you doing?" "Having a taste of the wine," Katsuki replied, and without another word he brought their mouths together, liking the red stain off Izuku's lip. "Aren't our parents right downstairs?" Izuku pointed out even as he leaned in for more. He placed his glass down on the desk, forgotten, and threw his arms around Katsuki. "Why does that matter? We're just kissing." "Unless you were planning to do something freaky," Katsuki teased, nipping his lower lip playfully. I just was wondering what brought this all on," Izuku breathed, trying to phrase his thought. A monumental task with the way Katsuki was distracting him. Katsuki drew away for a moment, averting his eyes. "I don't know, I guess I just like seeing you with my family. In my house. Like a part of my life." His embarrassed confession was enough to have Izuku's heart melting. Katsuki was cool and confident, but these moments where he was soft and genuine made him that much more lovable. Stopping himself from that thought, Izuku kissed Katsuki back, deepening it until that softness was hidden away on Katsuki's face again and his heart stopped aching with the thought of what he'd be leaving behind when he went back to the city. There was no use dwelling on feelings that wouldn't go anywhere. This thing between them would have to end, eventually. "I hate to say it, but we should probably head back," Katsuki sighed after a few minutes. Dad wouldn't want his roasted ham to get cold. Izuku hurried back downstairs. If the father was anything like the son about eating his food while it's freshest, he didn't want to keep him waiting, and soon, they were all seated at the dining table, chatting over piles of amazing food. It turned out, Katsuki got his knack for being in the kitchen from his dad, though he preferred baking to cooking. Mitsuki joked about how she attracted people who were wonderful chefs, complimenting Inko's cooking skills that she remembered from college, and Izuku pitched in about his mom's katsu being the best. Which of course turned into Inko and Katsuki teaming up to nag Izuku about learning to make his own meals instead of eating instant ramen and microwave dinners every day. Later into dinner, when the parents were talking over their multiple glasses of wine, Izuku felt a hand slide onto his thigh under the table. With a start, he shot a surprised glance to his side at Katsuki, but Katsuki paid him no attention, seemingly watching the conversation of the others. Izuku wasn't sure what he was thinking, but he settled back into his chair, just going with it. Katsuki didn't do anything further. Just rested his palm there, a pleasant warmth seeping through Izuku's pants to his skin. So Izuku simply enjoyed it, relaxing into the evening, watching their worlds seamlessly come together. He could almost picture this forever. Which was a dangerous thought. His and Katsuki's mothers were properly buzzed by the time the meal came to a close, ending with a decadent cranberry pie Katsuki had slipped out to put into the oven after the entree, as delicious as his snickerdoodles. They hugged as they rose from the dining table and meandered towards the front hall. "Oh Inko, I've missed you. I don't want this night to end," Mitsuki bemoaned. Now, Izuku didn't know Mitsuki very well, but he could tell when his own mom was up to something. Dramatically, she sighed, "Me too. Maybe I could spend the night here so we can spend more time together." Mitsuki applauded. "What a lovely idea. You can borrow Katsuki's room. He just changed his sheets earlier today, so they're nice and fresh." "What? Mom dash," Katsuki protested. "But that would mean leaving my poor boy home alone," Inko said. "That I've been staying at the cabin alone for a while now, Mom," Izuku muttered to her, starting to suspect where this was going. "Oh, but you can't even drive yourself back?" Inko pulled out of nowhere. "What? Why? You had that glass of wine earlier. What kind of mother would I be if I let my son drive under the influence?" Izuku blinked, trying to remember when he had drank and recalling the mostly untouched wine he left abandoned in Katsuki's room hours ago. "It's okay, I promise I'm completely sober dash. Katsuki, be a good boy and drive him home," Mitsuki commanded. "Ha! Quit bossing me around hag dash. And while you're at it, you should stay the night there so that Inko doesn't have to worry about her son being alone. I can't just crash at my employer's place. You have before." "Only 'cause I got snowed in." "Well then you'll have to find somewhere else to sleep since Inko is using your room tonight." "I never agreed to that dash." "Kaken, it's okay," Izuku interrupted. From the way Masaru had started calmly flipping through a book, he could tell Mitsuki and Katsuki would be going for a while if he didn't cut in. "I can just shoot Shoto a text, I'm sure he'd be fine with you staying at the cabin." "You don't have to give in to them," Katsuki sputtered. "They're clearly messing with us." It was a little hard to miss the way Mitsuki and Inko were stifling their laughs behind their hands at how awkward their sons were being. Izuku shrugged, hoping his blush wasn't too noticeable. "Either way, I wouldn't mind. That is, if you'll really be okay without me taking you home, Mom." "Mitzi will take care of me," Inko chirped, and Mitsuki drunkenly tackled her in a bear hug that almost sent them toppling over. Masaru stepped between the moms and the sons and clapped Katsuki on the shoulder. "It's okay, I can handle the ladies. You kids can go have fun." Izuku felt sufficiently assured, if not totally embarrassed, about Masaru sending them off, so with a final goodbye for the night, he and Katsuki made their way out to the truck. They sat in silence for a moment waiting for the engine to heat up and then took off for the brief drive to the Todoroki estate. Izuku stared outside, trying his best not to think about how their parents had basically sent them off to sleep together. That might be the most mortifying moment of his life aside from the mall Santa fiasco. He chanced to glance at Katsuki to find him doing the same thing, sitting stiffly with his eyes focused on the road. Even a bit awkward like this, Izuku appreciated his handsomeness in the meager glow from the streetlights. It's not that he'd be opposed to getting more physical if it weren't for the expiration date on their relationship. "So what is this place like when it isn't Christmas?" Izuku asked, trying to distract from the unspoken tension between them. Katsuki snorted. "What musutifu? Annoying as hell, honestly. They take down the decorations, but everyone is just as overly cheery as they are doing the holidays. Especially during the spring when the local farms really get started. There's always people in my way at the strawberry fields, stealing all the best berries so I have nothing to work with making my seasonal strawberry shortcake." "Strawberry shortcake?" Izuku muttered, mouth watering at the thought. He'd love to try Katsuki's strawberry shortcake. Too bad he'd be gone by then. And don't get me started on the summer barbecues. Shitty hair always forced me to help him host one. That dork has way too much time on his hands once the ice rink closes for the season. Izuku's mind was starting to paint a picture now. An extremely unhelpful one of what living here must be like for the rest of the year. At least fall is decent. It stays warm till pretty late in the year, so the weather is usually nice during Halloween. And it was just the nail in the coffin when Katsuki added, "It's great for the kids, being able to trick or treat and all that." Pretty sure the orphans go out on another field trip to see the Halloween decorations too. But geez, some of those decorations can get scary. Izuku pictures Eri several months from now, getting to celebrate Halloween. She'd be dressed up as something adorable like a witch, or a superhero, or a fairy, but she was so easily nervous still, hopefully none of the scary decorations would get to her. The kid will be fine, Katsuki responded, replying to Izuku's out-loud muttering again. That kid's grown a lot more confident since you showed up. Besides, you could always come visit. I'm sure she'd appreciate that. And from the blush taking up Katsuki's entire face now, Izuku was pretty sure it wasn't only Eri who would appreciate it. Izuku sighed. He couldn't let himself or Katsuki get carried away. I don't know, if I get into a program, I would probably have midterms around October. But yeah. Katsuki was silent for a moment. And then Izuku asked more about Mizutofu, and they chatted more about the place until they were pulling into the garage of the cabin. It was funny, Katsuki's words were harsh, but he could tell how much Katsuki loved this town. He'd found a good home here. Izuku just wished he found something like that someday too. They set up the couch for Katsuki to sleep on again, since Shoto hadn't said he could borrow a room when he said it was okay for him to spend another night. After, Izuku got ready for bed, throwing on his usual plaid pajamas. In the downstairs bathroom, he could hear Katsuki doing the same, using the change of clothes and toiletries he had packed from his house before they left. He wondered what Katsuki wore to sleep. He didn't picture him as a matching set person, but maybe sweats and a t-shirt, or maybe he just slept in boxers. It's cold at night, can't be a bad host, Izuku mumbled, grabbing an extra blanket and shuffling back down the stairs, definitely not just to see Katsuki one more time. Deku? Katsuki questioned when he appeared back in the living room. He was already reclined comfortably on the couch, skin glistening in the lights on the Christmas tree. So he slept shirtless. That totally did not just reboot Izuku's brain. What is it? Blanket, Izuku muttered as a smirk spread across Katsuki's face. Izuku tore his eyes away when Katsuki got up and stalked closer. A muscular forearm came into view and took the offered blanket from him. Wow, Baker's arms really are something, aren't they? Thanks, Snow Bunny, Katsuki drawled, directly into Izuku's ear. No problem. Good night, Izuku exclaimed, stepping back and beelining for the stairs. He couldn't let himself get carried away. Wait, Izuku dash. Izuku looked back from the foot of the stairs to see Katsuki extending an arm towards him, swagger from earlier gone. That red glare seemed to say so much even. As the man stayed silent, as if unable to voice exactly what he meant to. He looked soft. Standing comfortably in the room they decorated together, eyes holding feelings they were both scared to accept, reaching out. Izuku's breath caught. And then they were meeting in the middle, Izuku leaping into Katsuki's strong arms, and Katsuki half carrying him up the stairs. They made their way down the hall to the guest bedroom Izuku was staying in, Katsuki's grip never faltering even as their lips stayed locked. And before he could make any more excuses or any more second guesses, Izuku was thrown onto the bed and tangled with the man he'd come to love. What the heck? Izuku could linger in this dream a little longer. Late at night, laying worn out in Katsuki's arms and half asleep from their earlier activities, Izuku thought he heard some whispered words. What if you stayed here forever? Sleep carried him away before he could think too hard about them. Katsuki kissed him goodbye in the morning, slipping out of Izuku's hold at the crack of dawn and murmuring something about opening dynamite. Izuku hummed his acknowledgement before sleeping for a few more hours. When he finally did get up, he found a plate of omuris ready to be reheated waiting in the fridge. Shit, he could really get used to this. Izuku was feeling more refreshed than ever, and Inko commented on it when she returned to the cabin in the jeep. Really, Izuku, I think that staying here for the past while has been so good for you. Izuku smiled, basking in his morning. Yeah. I was reluctant at first, but it turned out to be perfect. His mom loved Mizutofu just as much as Izuku did when he brought her downtown for the day. Her and Ochako got to meet, and Inko basically swept out all the Christmas stores of their ornaments. Like mother like son, Izuku supposed. They stopped by Dynamite later, Katsuki texting Izuku he was just finishing up his last batch of snickerdoodles for the day, and he was as charming as the night before when letting Inko try one of his famous cookies for free. After that, they explored the night market before retiring for the evening. Izuku was so happy to be able to share this trip with his mom. With how hard she worked, she deserved to relax too. It was another fun day of exploring and then one more dinner with the Bakugos the next day before his mom had to head back into the city Monday morning for a few more days of work before her company's holiday break. Izuku had just gotten into the jeep to drive himself and his mom back to the cabin, after lingering in the doorway with Katsuki a little longer than he meant to, when his mom gasped in excitement. "Honey, look at this." She shoved her phone in his face as he tried to start the car. "My old college friend who's on the admissions committee at Harvard Law got back to me." "Mom, you reached out to someone at Harvard?" Izuku's brain stuttered to a halt as he read the emails of their exchange on Inko's screen. "Yes. I sent your resume to a few of my old acquaintances since I knew you were still struggling with deciding where to apply, and I thought it would be helpful for you to get to meet someone in the law field. She said she'd be willing to chat with you. Isn't it wonderful, Izuku? If you impress her, she may even help you get into Harvard." "But that was kind of huge." Great, you're right, that is helpful, isn't it? She'll be in the city for a few days, and she's free to meet up with you on Wednesday. But isn't that Christmas Eve?" As he struggled to process the information, Izuku's eyes drifted to Katsuki, who was still grinning at him through the front windshield from his home's doorway. "What if you stayed here forever? The thing about dreams is, you always wake up eventually." It took longer to pack to leave Mizutofu than it took to go there, even with Katsuki volunteering to help. It must have been because Izuku bought so many new things at the cute downtown shops and went a bit crazy decorating for Christmas. Not because Katsuki was dragging his feet along every step of the way. His mother had left on her pre-scheduled train that Monday, so it was just the two of them in the cabin. Katsuki's silence as they worked spoke volumes after how open they had gotten with each other in just these short few weeks. Although Izuku wasn't any better. His fingers hesitated as he reached to take down his ornaments from the Christmas tree they had set up together. "You should keep this," Izuku said, pulling the All Might ornament down and holding it out to Katsuki. The 2009 limited edition. Only Katsuki would also understand its value. Katsuki glared at him. "But it's yours. Consider it an early Christmas gift," Izuku pleaded with a smile. But Katsuki must have seen how fake it was. Can't accept a gift early." He closed Izuku's fingers around the ornament. "Just give it to me on the actual day." It stung when he drew away again, the warmth of his hand fading so fast. Izuku held back a wince. He had told Katsuki about the interview, that was why he offered to help pack. He assumed it was so that they could spend a little more time together before the early end of Izuku's vacation. But with the cold shoulder he was giving, Izuku couldn't help but wonder if he had shown up only out of spite. "That I just wanted to give you something to remember me by," Izuku muttered. Katsuki snorted, but it didn't seem to be in the amused way. "Yeah? You think you're so easy to just forget? You think I won't be thinking about you whether or not you try to placate me with some last-minute gift? You'll still be gone." A dash, Izuku flushed red, not expecting this serious a reaction from Katsuki. Sure, Izuku felt strongly for Katsuki, but he didn't realize those feelings would be returned. "I'm sorry. I just can't be here. It's too good an opportunity to pass up. I mean, I would be a fool not to accept it dash. Sheet, I'm sorry, Snow Bunny." Katsuki melted, gathering Izuku in his arms, and Izuku shook from how much he was trying to convince himself of his own words. It was hard to stick to the principles he had grown up with when he was soothed by something so simple as a hug. "I didn't mean for my words to come out that way. I swear, I'm trying so hard to be happy for you." But? Izuku asked, gazing up at him. Katsuki sighed. "But I'm having trouble being happy for you when I don't think you're happy for you." Huh. Izuku pulled back a little bit to think about that. "I mean, it's not really about happiness for me. It's just something I've worked for my whole life. I want to help people. And I can do that by working in law. It's SCKS that I can't celebrate Christmas, or sometimes I'm too busy, or I'll have to make last-minute changes to the plan like this, but it's just the sacrifice I have to make if I want to succeed." Katsuki gave him a scrutinizing look. Izuku tensed, feeling highly analyzed. Something Katsuki found must have been what he was looking for, 'cause his mouth crooked into that smirk that Izuku had come to love seeing. Okay, as long as it's what you want. Thanks for understanding, Izuku breathed. He was worried his last few encounters with Katsuki would be awkward, so it was relieving to see Katsuki loosen up. Wow, Midoriya-san, everything is so fancy. Mahoro cheered as she and the other kids danced around the front of the brick building. Izuku and Katsuki had decided to donate the decorations they had bought to the orphanage since the orphans loved them so much during their sleigh ride. Mirio had happily helped Izuku set up a few of the inflatables out front for the kids to play around. I'm glad you like it, Izuku exclaimed as he watched the excited kids. Out of everything in Mizudafu, the children at the orphanage would be what he missed the most. He turned to Eri, who was staring at everything with that wide-eyed awe. She still didn't quite match the energy of the other kids sometimes, but it was great to see that she at least seemed content. What do you think, Eri? He asked, drawing the little girl into the moment. I think it's really pretty, Midoriya-san, she replied with an adorable smile up at him. It'll make celebrating Christmas even more special. Good, I want you to have a special Christmas, Izuku started, kneeling down to Eri's level to prepare for what he was going to say next. About that, I have some grown-up stuff I have to do in the city tomorrow, so I won't be here for Christmas Eve. I'm really sorry, Eri. I know you'll still have a lot of fun, though. Oh, that was all Eri had to say in response. Her face dropped, resigned to Izuku's abrupt departure. And it broke his heart even more than Katsuki's reluctance. I'll still be here, and I'll make sure that Christmas is going to be extra cheerful, Mirio chimed in, coming to the rescue when he saw the little girl shut down again. With all of Midoriya-san's help, this holiday season has already been a blast, right? Eri agreed. Are you going to be back after Christmas? Izuku didn't know where he'd be after the holidays. If the interview went well, he could be swamped with networking and applications as soon as he got back to the city. But looking into Eri's eyes, he swore to himself, yes, I'll be sure to visit. Okay, Eri said, a little more assured. I guess Santa can't grant every Christmas wish that people ask him. You didn't have to drive me, Izuku muttered. The blush he couldn't keep off his face when Katsuki opened the passenger door of the truck for him again gave away how delighted Izuku was by the act. I could have just walked to the train station. No way. After the stunt you pulled during the blizzard, I've had enough of you freezing your butt off, Katsuki snarked. They cruised through the snowy hills, letting Izuku take in the scenery one last time before he was gone. You gonna make sure to stay out of snowbanks when I'm not around in the city? There aren't snowbanks in the city. With your clumsiness, you'll still find a way to get stuck in one, you Deku. The banter was fun. It was so natural with Katsuki. If he didn't have to go, Izuku really could picture a life with Katsuki forever. He knew they couldn't continue their budding relationship. Katsuki didn't seem like a long-distance kind of guy. But maybe, when Izuku visited next, they could talk like this again. When they got to the train station, Izuku gave in and kissed Katsuki one more time. Their mouths lingered, and by the time they parted, Izuku felt Katsuki shoving a box into his hands. Snickerdoodles? For the train ride, Katsuki explained. Izuku accepted the box, filled with childishly decorated snowmen and reindeer cookies. It was surprisingly goofy-looking for Katsuki's work. They may not be warm, but they're still good as hell. I'll cherish them, Izuku promised teasingly. I don't want you to cherish them, I want them to be eaten, Katsuki joked back. But just remember, you won't find cookies like that anywhere else. The ingredients to make them are freshest here. I know, Izuku laughed, used to Katsuki's ingredient talk at this point. I can't wait to have more next time I visit Mizudafu. But, you know I'll always be down to bake you a fresh batch. With one last look, Izuku entered the train station, sadly dragging his feet to the platform. He knew he should be excited, he was on his way to do something great for his future, but that didn't stop the gloominess from taking over. Katsuki was gone, driving back to his loving home to help his dad with making Christmas dinner, probably. The orphans would be back from school soon, and they'd start celebrating too. Eri probably was still upset he wasn't there. Downtown in Mizudafu, Ochako was probably mixing up another peppermint mocha for her girlfriend to finish off the peppermint syrup, and Kirishima and Ashido were probably helping happy families enjoy their holidays on the skating rink. There were so many wonderful things that made up Mizudafu. And Izuku would be leaving them all to return to his world of studying and networks and competing with wealthy people who barely gave him the time of day. He was aware that those things SCD, but they were the ingredients for the future he wanted. With a gasp, Izuku glanced at the box of childish cookies he still clutched in his hands. Of course. He was so caught up in the future he planned out for so long he wasn't paying attention to how his life was made up along the way. It wasn't Izuku's wants dictating his path, but the path obscuring what Izuku truly wanted. It was the ingredients that mattered, like Katsuki had been saying all along. And to him, Katsuki mattered, and Mizudafu mattered, and the orphans mattered. Oh gosh, Izuku had somewhere else he should be. Hello, I'd like to call a cab to the train station. I need to get to downtown Mizudafukaken? Izuku sputtered out into his phone as he caught sight of a familiar truck that hadn't actually left yet, and the handsome driver that gave him a knowing look. Katsuki smirked, and Izuku flew to him, giving him a tight enough hug to spin him around. Oi, careful. With the cookies, I don't want the shitty decorations to get ruined before the orphans even get to see them. Katsuki snorted, and Izuku let out an elated laugh. You knew I'd come back, Izuku exclaimed. Totally. You're not hard to read, Snow Bunny, Katsuki snarked, opening the car door for Izuku before climbing in himself. You think I didn't hear you promise to Eri and Santa that you'd spend Christmas with her? I knew you wouldn't want to let her down. Buckle up, we'll make it to the orphanage in no time. Katsuki had somehow known all along, before Izuku even arrived at his decision himself. That explained the oddly childish design of the snickerdoodles. Katsuki made them to be delivered to the kids. How did Izuku get so lucky to meet someone who knew him better than he knew himself? Izuku did as Katsuki said, relaxing into the car seat and feeling more sure about things than he ever had before. Thank you, Katsuki. Merry Christmas, everyone. Izuku and Mirio proclaimed as the orphans entered the old building to see stacks of presents for them under their Christmas tree. Katsuki laughed as the kids cheered and dogpiled onto the two other men. After some of the chaos had settled, Izuku felt a small hand take his. You're here. Eri beamed, and Izuku patted her on the head. I know I said I had some things to do, but I finally realized what's really important, he told her. So I couldn't pass up on spending Christmas with all of you. After a hearty meal and some playtime, Izuku found himself sitting around the Christmas tree with the children, Eri in his lap and Katsuki by his side. He was truly happy here. When the kids had been occupied with eating dinner, he'd sent a polite email to his mom's friend about his inability to meet up, and she had replied understandingly and even offered to meet at some later date. Sure, it was a missed opportunity, but Izuku knew that if he kept trying, he'd find more down the line. For now, it was about time he slowed things down and took some time to follow his heart instead of his goals. Careful not to disturb Eri, he pulled out his phone and started doing some job hunting. Jobs in the city, and closer to Mizudafu. Mirio nudged his shoulder with a conspiratory glance at his phone. You know, the school is looking to hire a new teaching assistant. Izuku's eyes widened at the implication, and Katsuki smirked. What did I tell you? I knew Aizawa-sensei needed an extra hand with all these brats. I don't know. I don't have all the schooling to be a teacher, Izuku stammered quietly, not trying to draw any of the kids' attention in case they got a little too excited about the idea too soon. It's not a full-time position, so there'd be no pressure about getting all the full-time qualifications right now, Mirio persuaded. You just need the child abuse clearances and a background check. Which you already have from your last mall cop job, Katsuki tagged on. And you'd be a natural. You're great with kids. The two blondes gave him a look, and with the weight of their stare, Izuku really thought about it. Oh gosh. A future in Mizudafu was looking even more clear. He looked at Eri and the other children he already cared about so much. He may not be changing laws, but he could be helping kids who maybe would someday. Well, I suppose I did used to dream about being a teacher. At that moment, Katsuki reached into his pocket and pulled out a paper with a cheesy red bow on it and handed it to Izuku. Eagerly, Izuku opened it up to see it was an application to the teaching assistant position ready to be filled out. But Katsuki really did know Izuku. He was glad he stuck around in Mizutofu long enough to see it. Because no matter what his uncertain future held, Izuku could at least be sure that Katsuki would be there to guide him. Izuku gasped in delight, and Katsuki smiled that soft smile he couldn't hide around Izuku anymore. "Merry Christmas, Izuku." And Izuku smiled right back. "Merry Christmas, Katsuki."